Present. All right. We have a quorum and we can continue. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We have had a citizen request that we table items 7 and 8 due to the length of the meeting. So I don't know if the board is willing to do that or if you just want to try and forge ahead. It's up to the board.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I would move that we approve the agenda with the tabling of the number 7, number 8, Ordinance 2021 TBD and Mayor's Report.
Okay.
It looked like a long agenda tonight.
Second.
Well, it depends on how long Riverbank goes. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes. Michelle.
Sorry. Could we potentially move them to the end of the agenda? So if we do happen to get through things more quickly, we could still include it?
Well, unfortunately, what the citizen wanted is she wanted them closer to the front of the agenda instead of at the end of the agenda because she didn't want to stay. So that is the issue, but it is up to the board, like I say. Dave?
I had the same comment.
All right, let me ask a procedural question. So, if we get through Riverbank and it's relatively early, can we re-amend the agenda? Corinne, Amanda? Oh,
I would typically defer to Bo, but I believe the board can amend the agenda at any time. The only caveat is the attendance. So the two individuals who are asking for it, yeah, I'm just supposed to let them know. I told them I would let them know if it was going to be tabled or what the decision of the board was.
I agree with Trustee Pattison and Knudsen. I think we should try to move it to the end. If we can fit it in, great. If not, we'll table it until next meeting.
okay. Any other discussion? Yes, Ms. Watson. Remember to turn on the mic.
You're talking about the agenda, but there are no agendas available on the table at the back. Okay, I'm a little blind right now. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
No second.
Oh, yeah, Karen seconded it. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So do you need, Amanda?
Trustee Bettinger? Trustee Johnson?
Nay.
Trustee Bear? Trustee Knudsen?
Aye.
Trustee Meck?
Aye.
Trustee Pattison?
Nay.
Okay, that motion passes. So those two items have been tabled till the next meeting. All right, next item on the agenda is announcements. I don't have any announcements. Does anybody else have an announcement?
So I have two announcements. One, a request to the board for a work session on June 15th. That would be an update by the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, and we would do that by Zoom so that the commissioner can testify. I'd also add a presentation by Colorado Communities for climate action so we can investigate what that nonprofit does and what other communities we are doing in climate action. So I'd like to suggest a work session on the 15th of June.
Okay. I was going to say, do you want to make a motion to that? Do we have a time on that, Dave?
I'm pretty I'd rather look at the email from the commissioner and to see what time. I think I said 5:30. I'm reasonably certain it's 5:30.
Okay, well, we can go ahead and set that meeting if you want to make that into a motion, and then
Yeah,
if it needs to change, we can change it.
change it. We have a couple meetings between now and then, so I'd like to move that we have a work session set for June 15th to hear from the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission and from Colorado Communities for Climate Action.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
5:30.
Okay. Suzanne?
I'm not against discussing this topic. I believe it's probably important. But in light of the council's feeling overburdened by all the meetings that we have, and the fact that you will be looking at changing our meeting schedule to the public, so we only have a board meeting once every 3 weeks, I really think you should think again before you start creating extra work in the form of things that are really not necessary. I think there'll be things coming up on the agenda that do really need your attention, and items like this, until you have a grip on these difficult meetings that you have, I would not put these electives on the agenda as in the form of work sessions. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Dave, second announcement.
Okay, second announcement has to do with a North Fork Resiliency Planning and Action Workshop. I just wanted people to be aware that this was put on by a number of nonprofit and for-profit and business organizations. It happened the last 3 Monday nights from 6 till 8:15. It was incredibly informative. Panels were presented on local food, local economy, and the circle of prosperity. We heard from business owners, farmers, artists, healthcare practitioners, and numerous nonprofits. There was a call out to the town for support of the improvements to Paulus Park and support for the summer farmers market. These video sessions can be viewed online by going to the North Fork Valley Resiliency Planning Workshop, and you can watch the entire 3 series, but it was definitely worthwhile about making a real strong local economy.
Thank you, Dave. Any other announcements? All right, seeing none, let's move on to recognition of visitors and guests. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on a subject that is not on the agenda? Yes, Barb.
Hi, is it on? Good. I have just a quick motion, and I have a handout to give all of you, but I have to tell you I was totally humbled today, thinking that I had this great idea, and then when I Googled it, there were over 14 million pages, so it's been around. What I'd like to do, and I know insurance is part of the question, but I'd like to turn Poplar Avenue between 3rd Street and 4th Street into what they call a play street. And that would be temporarily closing it on weekends for through traffic. I have signatures from all the homeowners on Poplar, plus one that lives on 3rd, but her driveway's on Poplar. We have 11 homes with adults only living in them, and then we have 4 houses with kids. And the kids range, there's a 1-year-old, and then 3 5-year-olds, and a couple 6 7-year-olds, and 1 8-year-old. And they're all learning how to ride bikes. And what we would like to do, this is a worldwide thing that happens, and you can all read this, but Philadelphia's been doing this for over 50 years. So it would just temporarily, from let's say 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays till dusk on Sundays. So it won't affect school time or anything, is to close our street for through traffic. What we've found is the kids have been out playing, and it's adults without children that are guarding either end of the street to keep people from coming down. I'm also working with Rocky Mountain Health. They're very supportive of this whole thing. In fact, Blue Cross Blue Shield in Minnesota has sponsored 8 communities with this play street. So I'm just going to hand these to you, and we'll go from there. Who wants the name of homeowners? Amanda?
That would have been a coup. Oh. I was going to say, yeah, I think we should stick this on the agenda. Yeah, bring them all. Maybe we can get this on the agenda for next week or next meeting. And seems like this could be a real slam dunk and a real good thing for the community. Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, just a procedural question about that. Wouldn't it be just a street closure permit that goes through town administration for something like that?
No, because it's more than 5 hours.
Okay.
So then it does need to come to the board. Okay, can we stick that on the agenda for next time? All right, thank you so much, Barb. What a wonderful idea. I'm excited. Yeah. All right, next up, anyone else want to? Yes.
Thomas Markle, 302 2nd Street. I want to talk about water and billing real briefly. I'm here just as Thomas from 302, not associated with the water board or for anybody. This is about my personal water account, which I've talked about numerous times. This is probably the 8th time I brought it up. So on I had a call with Mayor Backren last week, and during the call she mentioned that perhaps I'm paying additional water fees because I share my water with visitors from town, or I use more water, and I wanted to make clear to the board that the reason that I'm paying an extra water fee is because town chooses to bill me one, okay? So let me disabuse you of the notion that the second bill is sensible or equitable or even legal, okay? I'm going to read you the portion of the municipal code that pertains to the billing that I'm talking about. This is 13-120B, section 13-1-20, Bravo, okay? Additional basic water rates for multiple businesses on one lot or in a single business, or in a single building, sorry, multiple businesses. Okay, I have one business. A commercial unit with plumbing shall pay one basic rate. I have a commercial unit with plumbing. I shall pay one rate. Each additional commercial unit, I don't have any, I have one, on the property or located in a single building with plumbing shall pay 1/5 of the basic commercial. I pay 2 full water rates, okay? Each additional commercial business, which I don't have, on a property or located in a single building anticipated to use 5,000 gallons of water per month or more shall pay the full commercial water rate. I still don't have a second one. In my personal use, I use less than 5,000 gallons a month, okay? Any commercial business contained on a commercial property within a commercial building that has individual accessory plumbing fixtures but not a kitchen shall pay 1/5. Again, I don't have an additional commercial unit. If plumbing fixtures are in a communal area and serves multiple communal needs of more than one commercial business housed in the same building, I don't have multiple commercial businesses in the same building or on the property, it will be included in the first basic rate. The end. We have contacted Corinne on a personal basis over the past 2 months and asked her to address this and received no response. I'm asking you to deal with it, okay? Bill me fairly according to the law, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Anyone else want to address the board? Okay, seeing none, let's move on with staff reports. Corinne, administrators.
Included in the packet is a written report, and I do have some follow-up information to add, as well as some follow-up answers to questions presented by Trustee Pattison. Did want to make the board aware that the boring for Lee's Park for irrigation is scheduled to be completed Tuesday, so they will not be on potable water for watering. It will be on irrigation water. And also wanted to clearly bring to the board that upon evaluation of the spring flows, we would consider the town to be in stage 1 of the conservation and management plan. That was the second page attachment to Resolution 2020-17. I am currently working on an extended version of the conservation and management plan that was attached to that, and I have requested the Advisory Water Committee to assist with recommendations regarding drought water rate modifications and potential watering restrictions to bring to the board at a later date. And to answer questions provided by Trustee Pattison, the North Fork Pool Park and Recreation District contracts with the town have been added in Muni Docs under contracts, so you can access them through the municipal code. The Part 3 of the master plan is primarily driven by the Planning Commission, and once we receive the updated revisions to 1 and 2, I will take them to the Planning Commission and request an updated calendar on completion for the draft for Part 3 of the master plan, which is the goals and objectives sections. The updates on the SGM and JDS Hydro will be provided from the Advisory Water report. The green space policies, as far as planting and maintenance in the open green space right-of-way, I am working with the tree board members on policies as well as the training plans. That's still underway primarily with the tree board. Amanda conferenced with Mail Services, which is the company that provides our utility bills, about adding and integrating so that community members could review their bills or receive an e-statement. Currently, the program we're on is outdated. They do have an updated program, and we are a community on the list to have that update, which then would make it possible for people to create an account with Mail Services and review their bills online. Payment would still be through the standard methods, but they would be able to see them and look their bills up electronically. The next question was a schedule on future tree pruning. We're waiting for the Forest Service to complete their upcoming assessment and inventory in Apple Valley, and then we will have an updated pruning plan, and that will follow that. We anticipate her to be out within the next month. She was waiting for the majority of the trees to start blooming before she came and did her assessment. Let's see. There was a question about, in the finance report package, page 17, regarding the depreciation error that was found. The error was less than $11,000, and it occurred prior to 2018, so there is no impact on our current budget. More information will come out about that through the audit. Let's see. The typical timeline for an audit process, the audit begins January 1st, has to be submitted to DOLA by July 31st. But we do anticipate to receive our audit presentation along the same timeline as last year, so we anticipate them to be here in June at a meeting. The COVID relief funds, a final report will follow the expenditure of the remaining funds. We have until the end of the year to expend that, and we have not assigned those to any specific item to date. The Public Works testing, you have to wait 30 days to schedule your next test, and the retesting cost is $100. So the town will be paying $100 for the second test. The apologies for the water report. It was completed, but I was remiss to add it to the packet when I was completing the packet on Friday. I have supplied it in paper form. I've put some out on the table for the community, and they are available to anyone upon request at Town Hall. Let's see. The bulk fill water system is installed and operational. Training's been completed, and we have the ability to create the accounts. The system hasn't been open to the public yet while we were still evaluating the spring flows. The 1 million gallon plant, we are in the process of bringing that back online. Barring any issues, that process can take anywhere from 10 to 21 days. So we anticipate that the plant will be back online by June 1st. And any update or further action regarding the raised ammonia levels at the wastewater treatment plant. Via the review with our engineer, we found that the rolling average was miscalculated, and we did not have a violation in the rolling average for the ammonia levels, but we are still working with SGM on a plan for how to deal with ammonia as the system takes on, as it ages and has more use. I've tentatively rescheduled our water and sewer plant tours for May 25th at 9 a.m., and I'm waiting for the videographer to confirm that he can make that work with his schedule. And the final report for the sanitary survey, I don't have a timeline from CDPHE on when we'll get back their final information, but our deadline for submittal for the last two items is this Friday, the 30th, and we are on track to have everything submitted on time, and then we wait for CDPHE to respond. So that is all I have. If you have any questions, I know it was a lot.
Questions for Corinne from the board? Yes, Bill.
My question concerns the sewer plant, the ammonia levels. I realize a miscalculation, but a general question is, do you have to work with CDPHE on various treatment techniques in the sewer plant, or is that something you guys just do in-house?
I'm sorry, can you say it?
Do you got to get prior approval to make changes in the sewer plant processing prior to implementation, or is that something you guys just do?
I don't believe, Travis.
If we're just adding ammonia treatment as a additive in a chemical, we can do it without CDPH approval. If we're gonna add actually like nitrification strippers and stuff like that, which is a treatment process, then we have to go through CDPHE for
Okay.
treatment.
And the next question I had is on the continued employment of Mr. Leslie for the water licensing. Do we have an agreement, or is that just still a verbal?
It's still a verbal agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Corinne? Go, Matt.
Regarding the art edition and dedicated plaque, is there a committee, organization, or group that approves statues or artwork to be placed on town property? How does that come about?
There isn't a formal committee for that review. This process came about through it was part of, well, was it really part of the CDOT?
That poll is part
Part of our revitalization.
project, yeah.
And so this was done, there were several entities that participated. It was the Peonia Creative District, Norfolk Creative Coalition,
Rotary.
there was a few individual members from the community. We had a landscape architect that was part of that planning and process.
I see the statue is, it appears to be a Native American,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if any Ute tribes were contacted to see if the depiction is okay with them.
No, we did not contact. The art installation is Well, I don't, how would you describe it? It's a miniature version of a very large piece that's in
No,
Albuquerque
I
Airport.
understand that.
Yeah. So no,
But-
we did not contact anyone specific to that piece of art.
And this issue was raised with the Rotary Club, and it was addressed by the Rotary Club, and they were okay with it after they looked into it. But I'm not exactly sure what they did.
Okay. I just think we have to be mindful of those who came before us, and especially with what's going on with all the other monuments across the U.S. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Anyone else on the board? Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, I just have a request. I saw someone post on Facebook the other day that they were looking to plant a tree on their property and looking for recommendations. So I wonder if we could get that specific appendix related to the Forest Service study or the Forest Service inventory on the website, the one that lists recommended species, so that we can make sure the public knows about that when, you know, during planting season when people may be able to take advantage of the list. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Yes, Tammy.
Regarding that, it would be nice to get that on the tree board website, so I'll check that out and remind them, and if you know them, that there is a tree board, and a tree board website, which has a lot of information on it.
Yep, and I did take a look and I saw that there were recommendations on there, which I think is fantastic. I agree it'd be great to get the updated appendix from the Forest Service on there as well. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the treasurer's report. Mr. King. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. All right, Suzanne.
In addition to the tree suggestion is the type of trees that you asked to be planted in the tree strip could be different than what people can plant on their personal property. And so our town tree strip trees are a little bit more limited. And as far as personal property, the Extension Service might have good resources. And I don't know if the tree board wants to differentiate between the two, perhaps. So homeowner versus street tree. And I had a question about this comment on the administrator's report about staff reports will be provided once a month. The police report will only be once a month, and Public Works. We have a resolution 2017-10, and it indicates the agendas, the format of the agendas, and it does indicate staff reports. I don't think this is a simple administrative decision. And I'm a little concerned about not having a police report every meeting. And we also have an ordinance that says the chief of police has to be in attendance at each meeting too. I was going to look that up for you, but I need to get the town's password for their internet. Is it on the door, the window? Okay, thanks.
Yes, Paige. No, red light.
I couldn't quite understand when Corinne was mentioning the engineering reports. So have the engineering reports both been submitted to the town and to the Water Advisory Board meeting group?
No, I stated the Advisory Water Committee would report out about the engineering reports.
So they have them?
No.
And when do you expect them? Because it seemed like it was going to be 2 weeks ago. They were supposed to be in on a Monday?
While Trustee Meck looks at that, I'll clarify for Ms. Watson. I'm speaking about the written reports that the staff has been directed to include in the packet, which is an addition and not a requirement. And it's my intention not to require staff to provide those at every meeting because they are very time consuming.
And regarding the SGM study, the last component of the study having to do with capital improvements and plans for the / sludge and, analysis and ammonia are being worked on at this time, so that we are expecting that soon. And the JDS hydro study is scheduled to be completed on May 10th. And a presentation should be given on that. We had originally planned no later than June, but it will depend on the availability of JDS hydro staff. Thank you. And I just wondered, do these dates correspond with their deliverables that were in the contract with the city?
No, those were extended due to COVID.
Okay. And it seems like it continues to be extended, so I'm just hoping that this can get done soon, because our Water Advisory Committee is waiting for this information so we can do what I feel like is a pretty big priority. So thank you. And then I just have a question about Alan Leslie, who is the ORC. I looked up on CDPHE, and they seem to be really quite militant about an ORC. And I'm curious, I have 3 questions: that it's pro bono, and why isn't there a contract, and does a town, did he provide a written delegation plan to have Travis continue to do the work? It could be, CDPHE has already dinged another town for not doing this properly, so I'm concerned.
I've communicated with our compliance officer about our situation and exactly what we're doing, and have had no issues noted or stated, so I do believe that we are fine at this moment.
Do you have a delegation plan?
There is a delegation plan. It was not done in writing.
I have to tell you, I'm quite concerned that this could turn out to be an Achilles heel with CDPHE, regardless of the contact with that person. You might look at their webpage to see just how uptight they are about it. Okay, thank you. So let me just ask this. So pro bono, really, there's no quid pro quo here?
There is absolutely no charge or trade or in kind of any kind for him standing in as our ORC with a delegation plan to Travis, based completely on his working relationship with Travis and Travis's knowledge of the system.
Okay, that's wonderful, but I'm still concerned about not meeting the letter of the law. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to have questions on the administrator's report? All right, seeing none, now let's move on to Mr. King and the treasurer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've reviewed with the finance director the payroll and have released the funds for disbursement. We've reviewed disbursements with the Finance and Personnel Committee and recommend approval. And we've been working with the draft policy of the fund balance and reserve policy, and we'll be discussing it with the Finance and Personnel Committee tomorrow at our disbursement meeting. And that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. King? Okay, seeing nothing from the board, anything from the public? All right, seeing nothing from the public, let's move on to disbursements. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that we pay accounts payable in the amount of $19,004.37, a transfer to Summit of $50,000, excuse me for a minute, my malfunction, transfer to payroll of $23,825.64, payment of payroll taxes of $25,996.20, a transfer from ops of $50,000, a transfer from ops for the payroll amount of $23,825.64, and a direct deposit payroll of $23,825.64.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, seeing nothing. Oh, sorry, Michelle.
Not just one. What was the lockout charge for?
Oh, it was kind of embarrassing. Someone actually accidentally locked themselves out of a car in Delta and had to use a locksmith to get back in.
On town business, I assume?
Yes, it was town business.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It wasn't me.
Anything else? Anything from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to accept disbursements. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. Yes, sir.
You had in the packet a finance report. Are we allowed to ask questions on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. It depends if Corinne can answer those questions because Cindy is not here.
She probably can.
Okay.
On page 19, the comment about COVID relief funds, there seems to be some disagreement going on around that we got 125,000. And this says a total requested is a little over 86,000. Now, I originally understood that the COVID relief that we could apply for up to 125,000. We didn't necessarily have to. Or was the town awarded 125,000?
The town was awarded just over 125,000, and the 86,382.52 is what's been expended from the monies that were received and have been requested.
So in our audit, somewhere along the line, we'll see a balance of the remaining amount of money.
Yes.
And do we have a placeholder where that money is going to be used, or what are we doing with that?
Not yet. That we're still determining where the best place is to use those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Now let's move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Discussion from the board? All right, seeing none. Anything from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, let's move on to the public hearing on the Riverbank proposal. Hold on 1 minute, let me get it up on my screen here. Okay, so I'm going to open this hearing. And so we are having a hearing on the Riverbank Neighborhood Major Subdivision Review Hearing. All right, first up is staff presentation. Corinne.
Thank you. The majority of the presentation is included in the administrator report, but I would like just to read the introduction to the report, which states that Evo Renkema, on behalf of Old World LLC, provided an initial major subdivision application and variance request for review with previous Administrator Knight in 2017 and 2018. The process had some delays and was readdressed following my assuming administrator duties in 2019. A joint community work session with the Planning Commission Board of Trustees was held and well received June 4th, 2020. The primary areas of concern from the community during the meeting were a walking path to connect the neighborhood to the school property and the inclusion of sidewalks. The application was deemed substantially complete November 25th, 2020, and the applicant was so notified via email. Subsequent virtual meetings, reviews, and correspondence ensued to bring us to date. The applicant provided updated data and responses to town engineering reviews and requested the process move forward as presented February 22nd, 2021. Due to a noticing error, the original Planning Commission review was rescheduled from March 25th to April 16th, 2021. The hearing took place as scheduled with a large community turnout. Included in the packet and report are the initial recommendations from staff from the Planning Commission and updated comments. Thank you.
Okay, next up is the applicant presentation. Frederick? Okay, come to the mic, turn it on.
I'm Frederick Zimmer. I'm representing Mr. Ivo Renkema. I will be the contractor on the project. Ivo felt like it was better for you all to see his presentation he had put together for a previous meeting than for me to say whatever I was going to say. So.
Do you want to walk us through this, Frederick?
It has a voiceover.
Oh, that's even better.
Welcome to this presentation for the Riverbank neighborhood in Peonia. Please allow me to introduce our family. We are married with 4 children. We used to live in Colorado, and some sunny day we may return. At this time, we're living in Holland, Europe. By the way, the girl in the middle with the fluffy hair, because she's jumping on the trampoline, is named Peonia, so the town is her namesake. The Riverbank property, shown here in red, is located within the town limits of the town of Peonia. Our property is accessed from Price Road. It borders the North Fork, lies to the west of the high school, and to the south of the hops farm. As some of you will remember, there's quite a bit of history. The Riverbank neighborhood was proposed as a medium-density residential development. That is a density similar to downtown Peonia, or some 50 lots. We got an 80% approval in the popular vote in 2006 and were annexed in town with R2 residential zoning. At that time, in 2006, the Riverbank had 4 owners. In subsequent years, the other owners moved on to different projects. The Riverbank offers important benefits. Of course, it will broaden the tax base for the town. Our in-town location allows for a walk or an easy bicycle ride to Grand Avenue. This compares favorably with homes built in the county, where people are forced to take the car for all errands. The Riverbank slopes to the south, which offers great solar exposure, both for passive and active solar. The lots on the south end have a direct access to the North Fork. The lots on the north end offer spectacular views of Lambourne and Land's End. Finally, the Riverbank already has the main lines for in-town water and sewer on its property. Now, in 2020, we propose a simpler Riverbank neighborhood with only 15 residential lots. These lots are sized around 1 acre. During a fact-finding mission in March of this year, we talked to several parties, and scaling down from 50 to 15 residential lots was received favorably. Riverbank lots will be accessed by a newly built road, Atlantic Avenue, which dead ends in our neighborhood. We have plenty of irrigation water, both from the Feldman and the Farmer's Ditch. The Riverbank would be a 2-phase development. This sketch shows the first phase for 7 residential lots and 1 open space lot. One enters from Price Road, shown here with my cursor. The green triangles represent an evergreen buffer to ensure the privacy of the existing homes along Price Road. Also located at the entrance of the Riverbank are 2 acres of open space, which will be administered by our HOA. Horses may graze here, or it may become a community garden/food forest. Lots up to number 7 have a direct access to the North Fork, so these are really sweet home sites. Along Atlantic Avenue, there is a babbling stream. It's actually the Feldman Ditch, which runs through the Riverbank property. The second phase will open up 7 more view lots on the north end. Here, you can enjoy spectacular views of Lambourne and Land's End while sipping morning coffee on your patio. Well, this concludes the presentation. Thank you for your time, and we're looking forward to your comments.
Okay. That is the applicant. Okay, so from the board, questions for the staff and the applicants? Yes, Michelle. Whoa.
Just a procedural question. This is an extensive packet of information. Are we asking questions on the entire thing right now, or how are we approaching this?
Yes, being that this is the hearing that will either approve it or not, we are asking questions on everything.
Okay, I didn't know if we were taking it in chunks tonight, or
Well,
how you
let's
wanted.
just do it.
Okay. All right, I have some questions. So on page 38, I'm wondering if the street build-out would be limited to the 2 lots that are proposed to begin development in phase 1, or would the street build-out continue down to the cul-de-sac in anticipation of further development?
That would be dependent on the board's direction with regarding one of the variance requests, which was specific to how that would be implemented as far as the sidewalk, curb, and gutter. Usually, the street portion is done toward the end of the development, is my understanding.
Yes, it would be most beneficial, I think, to all parties to do the road construction at the end, because if we're going to construct on the new road, you know, it's only going to be, it's going to degrade to whatever degree it will, and we will surrender the road at the end of the project to the town. So, you know, I think we would all want it to be in the best shape possible. I think there's also an aspect of the funding for the road. With sale of more lots, there's that much more funding to continue more and more of the infrastructure, and that's why the 2-phase idea. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions, Michelle?
I do. Do you want me to keep
Please,
going?
yeah,
or are we taking
keep
turns
going.
here? Okay, I'll keep going. The Planning Commission recommendation for R1 zoning, I think that makes sense. The applicant specifically refers several times to the low-density character of the development, and to me that suggests R1 zoning. So just a comment on that. And sorry, trying to find my actual questions versus comments here. So there's a section on page 198 that lists the maximum number of units up to 125. That caught my attention. So I wanted to check on how that plays into the plan that we have now for 15 lots.
So one of the comments in my attorney report is that through this process, these are existing CCNRs that encumber the property, and that upon the approval, the CCNRs will need to be updated to reflect the changes that are being made with this subdivision. So there would be, in essence, there would be a requirement there'd be an amendment to these CCNRs to reflect that. These are the pre-existing CCNRs that were recorded against the property when the developer was going through some other phases, if you will.
Okay, just to make sure I'm understanding that. So if the board approved tonight, we would not be approving that maximum of 125 units. That would be reduced to the amount of units actually under discussion. Okay.
My recommendation is that the CCNRs have to be updated to reflect the approvals. So.
Okay, so according to our planned unit development code, this is in our municipal code 165240, it says that the location of any temporary model homes or sales offices would need to be included on the site plan, and I don't see that included here in the packet. I just want to make sure we're complying with our own code.
We're not under a PUD, we're under a major subdivision.
Okay, so then in that case, would a model home or sales office actually be allowed, or would that be disallowed because that's a business use in a residential zone?
I don't understand. I mean, I don't believe that they're asking for that in terms of the application itself. So.
Okay, I believe that was described as an option for the owner of Lot 1 to place a model home or sales office at his discretion. That was in the CCNR section of the document, so I think that would be another piece to update. And I just wanted to double check on the actual property boundaries, because we did have a question from a community member about river access and a concern that this may impede that property owner's river access. So does the property line of this development actually extend into the river, or is there an existing property that goes over to the north side of the river so that this isn't actually riverfront? That's not clear to me.
There are sections of Riverside Estates, which are on the West 4th Street, that do cross the river, and not all of the lots go directly to the river, no.
But the first two lots, the ones that would be in phase one, those, in the survey that's included in the packet, it looks like that the lot lines extend to the center line of the river. Is that accurate?
Could you tell me what page you're looking at? I'm scrolling through, but as you know, there's a lot of pages.
Sure, sorry. I'm around
Thank you.
230s, I think, is where that was.
They don't see how, lot one does, lot two is on the roadside. But lot one does go to the river. And lot four.
Okay, thank you. And then on page 237, there's a section where the board signs an approval. What exactly are we approving on that page? Are we attesting to the accuracy of the survey, or what's our role there?
No, you're not. That attest is being done by the surveyor with their certification. You guys are approving the plat for this subdivision. So you'll be approving the plat notes. You have some of that phasing aspect, if you will. Coupled with that is that you'll be signing off, allowing them to, this is basically the first step that allows them to proceed with respect to putting in their infrastructure. And then they'll go to final plat subsequent to this.
And on page 241, there's a reference to a design review committee. In our code, we don't have a design review committee, I don't believe. We have a development review committee, but I'm not sure who's on that, what the appointments are, what the term is. So we may need to check on that.
Yeah, and again, one of the other notes that I had is that we have to update this SIA because this is a document that can be approved after the preliminary plat that will reflect some of the variances that you may have, and that's a great note that we picked up.
And then has the town calculated an anticipated cost to maintain the 1,700-foot road with curbs and sidewalks that would be, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think Mr. Zimmer spoke to this, the road once complete, once the subdivision was sold, the road would be deeded over to the town and would become the town's responsibility. So what is that going to cost us to maintain this road?
I have not calculated maintenance costs for a 1,700 feet of road.
And then that's all I have for questions. I have a couple of comments specific to the Planning Commission recommendations. Are we doing those now too?
Oh, let's go ahead and get questions from the board, and then there will be a time for us to do discussions, and then we can bring those up at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions from the board? Yeah, Mick.
The buffer zone, if that is turned into a park, will the public be able to use that, or is that just for those in the homeowners association?
In this version, I don't know. In the previous version, there were also like 3 or 4 parks, and those were always intended for public use. I can't speak specifically, though, as to how the HOA would work in that park, but I know as far as, I know Evo's vision was more, it would be a community resource. And that's the whole idea of allowing the bike trail to come through, and always having had the idea of putting the bridge across, so that not only would residents of the property be able to walk into town, but that town members could go back and forth.
And per our municipal code, part of a major subdivision is the inclusion of open space that would be open to the public.
Okay, Bill?
Thank you. I also was concerned about the R1 and the R2 and the trail easement. In addition to that, is this 50% on the sidewalk, gutter, and streets? How are we going to verify that the funds are available to build this at 50% development?
That's addressed and will be addressed in the updated CCNR. They're required to place money in an account as determined by the town's engineer on what the cost would be, and then implement, and that would happen prior to the development of the lots.
Well,
Right, the SIA, sorry, not the CCNR.
my concern with this is a recent development that we saw up in the Hawkshaven division, where they were also supposed to pave their road, never did. Original organization went through bankruptcy, and therefore, when they came out, that requirement was eliminated. So I have a real concern about that. The contractor or the proposed owner is responsible for all the water and sewer lines installation. Are these all going to be installed prior to any development? And whose responsibility is that? And is there going to be any engineer that's going to be observing this and make sure that they all meet the town code?
Yes, the water and sewer lines would have to be installed prior to construction. The water and sewer lines have already been engineered, and then their engineer is supposed to inspect it during installation.
I think before we approve this, we ought to make that a requirement. Yeah.
The contractor would want to have an engineer of record on the job verifying that everything was done to specification, again, because we're required to pass it to Travis in the condition that he expects. So that would be that would definitely be part of the plan.
Okay, good. And then there wouldn't be any problem then for them just to submit a letter to us. Okay. There was a letter in here from concerns from the Delta County Planning Commission, and I saw that their letter of concerns was, anybody ever respond to them on their concerns?
Yes, both the town and the contractor, the applicant, responded to Delta County and is in the process of doing the applications and things that they need to at the county level, contingent upon the board approval.
Okay. Okay.
Other questions from the board? Yes, Dave.
Could we please put the plot plan back up on the screen? It's on page 236. want to make sure I'm understanding where the riparian area is. Is that right in here and not on the property? There's a huge riparian area when you come in that access area that has a whole bunch of cattails and there's a lot of drainage in there. And I want to know where the property lines are in relation to that riparian area.
Let's share the mic.
Was brought up in the planning and zoning meeting that this issue of this wet area, and it is recognized as a wetlands, but it's incorrectly recognized as such. It is the result of flood irrigation. It's of the ditch. So there have been research done in previous years where they did not flood irrigate, and I have subsequently had the rancher that's down there stop irrigating, and Jeff Rupert, the engineer, pointed out that this is a problem that exists around the valley. And it's not the only ditch that has become a wetlands, but with the piping of the ditches, they're seeing these wetlands go away. So we are going, the plan is to stop the flood irrigating at this point and see what happens. And by previous experience, that area will go away. It will dry up. And so it ceases to become. Then we have to go to the wetlands registry and have them revise.
So that's one concern, the disappearing of wetlands in the valley and the impact on wildlife and birds. Second thing is, if you could bring this up so we could see the river itself down here. This property does not actually come right against the river. Property owners on the opposite side. And what I was really where that trail is going, because I'm not seeing on the map. I know that we have a project going from the high school along the river on school property right to the edge of this property. But then a previous plat showed it going back up. Right.
Runs down along the road and then
yeah. And
it's been worked on with Ben Graves and Jake Harder are both working on that. And we had a meeting recently with they two, Jeff Rupert, myself, and Rance, and that is all definitely part of the plan. It's in the drawing. I think it was in the other, I don't know if it's on there. Is it on there? Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely part of the plan.
So the concern on this is that this is not reality as far as how we work as citizens here. People will not go over all the way through here and back down to get to where there might be a bridge at some point across the river. They're going to walk across here. So it seems like work with the property owners here on easements for that trail makes a lot more sense than trying to route it through the subdivision.
Well,
and then
the trail from the high school is up here. It's not down here. Their plan is to take the trail back up into the property.
At the top?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a bunch more property there than just what borders the river.
Okay.
They're trying to make better use of all that space, the idea being more of a walking trail, because it's not that much physical distance.
Okay.
So that's part of it.
Okay. So I knew Ben's coming a little later, so maybe you can answer that question about exactly where that trail will go. And then the last thing, I didn't see anything on the plat about the detention ponds, like how that's going to affect these properties, because there's going to be some detention that has to be done for runoff. And I didn't see it on this. And I haven't seen nothing in the packet. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to see those.
Ben, did you want to address the trail at this point?
Yeah, I know. I'll do this. Yeah, so I guess the idea with the trail was to provide connectivity between the high school, the K-8 and the library. I do agree with Dave that trail users do what trail users do, and direct paths are direct paths. There's going to be social trails until those houses are built, and until it's very clear that that is not the designated trail. It's my hope that we can work with Frederick and with Evo to actually put some of that trail in prior to selling of properties, so it's very clear where the trail goes and that we can establish a historical precedence. Because if we have, the trail will be completed in the school district property by August of this year, and so if people begin socializing, cutting across that property to get to Price Road, or cutting through those properties to get to wherever they want to go, they're going to start to establish social trails. And so it's my hope that we can work on getting that trail put in and established with crushed gravel so that we can really direct the traffic. I mean, I agree that it's going to be very difficult with those landowners to have people, a social trail will arise unless we're really clear and say this is a trail and it's crushed gravel and it's established prior to people starting to get down there. So that's what's my hope, is that we can work on getting the trail put in ASAP so that we avoid that social trail issue. But yeah, Frederick's totally right. There is a loop planned, and so at any point along that loop, it's actually kind of hard, Dave, to stay along the river at that point because there's like kind of this braided channel, and it's really messy down there. And so where Frederick kind of pointed out is a very nice, congruous path. And so I just hope that the town can help us as the school district and other partners on this get that trail in. It's about 890 feet, linear feet, and the sooner we can put crushed gravel and establish it, the fewer of those kind of social trails we'll start to see forming. So.
Thank you, Ben.
So we're totally, and Ben and I have talked about that. I've offered to lend labor and machinery to the building of the trail, and we're totally happy to agree to make that happen at the beginning. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Dave.
Okay, last one has to do with the engineering in the 100-year floodplain and what has happened with the climate in the last couple decades. And if you look at the property itself, there's quite a drop on those lots. If you look at the contours, you can see it dropping quite a bit. And then most, I think it's lot 4 and some of the other lots along the river are actually in that lower 100-year floodplain. I'm just not confident that things being built in there will not be susceptible to flooding.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Other questions from the board? Yeah, Michelle.
Sorry to jump in. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question on the trail related to Dave's comments. For clarity, is the ultimate vision for the trail to have an actual, like a gravel trail or something alongside the road, or would the trail be the road itself through the subdivision?
It would be some of both. Where it comes in from the high school, it's just a gravel trail, then it'll use the road for a little ways to get down to the piece of trail, the gravel trail that will take you to the river. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I think eventually there's a lot of talk of just greater trail connectivity, and I think I would love to see the option of continuing along Price Road to get to continue downstream, because I think as we envision a trail that traverses more of the North Fork, and it work with, I know town has property downstream, there's other property owners in between there and Bigby's and then downstream that are interested in the idea of entertaining, like, what does a trail look like? Could we sustainably manage and have more recreation along the North Fork? Getting to Price Road would be nice, and then continuing downstream from there, crossing to the town lot that's along. I don't know. Those are all questions that I'd love to, we're talking about in that Peonia in Motion working group. But as long as we can get to Price Road, this would be a really good first start.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Bill.
Some maps indicate a cul-de-sac at the end of the street. Other maps indicate a dead end, and some just indicate a small turnout. Which one design is going to be the appropriate one?
It's a cul-de-sac.
Other questions? Right, there's also another turnaround between 4 and 5 for emergency vehicles. So we have two. We have the cul-de-sac where they can turn around and then midway down it. as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, some maps, they indicated that at that and at the end. Other maps had the cul-de-sac, others didn't have anything, so.
Okay.
Are we going to end up with a overall master plan that shows the final design?
I believe they are over there.
That is going to be the final design? Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions from the board? All right, seeing none, we're going to open this up to public comment. So rules for public comment. You have 3 minutes for each speaker. Come forward to the podium, identify yourself with name and address. Repetitious comments will not be acceptable. If a previous speaker has already made your point, you may simply come forward and state that you concur. No public demonstrations of any kind, applause or otherwise, will be permitted or tolerated. All right, who would like to make a comment from the public? Paige. Oh, goodness.
There we go. Sorry, user error. So I have several comments, but I just noticed something on page 237 on flat notes that is a little troubling to me, and I just now read it. It's number 9. In case of default by the owner, the town of Peonia will have the right to complete improvements itself or may contract with a third party for completion. The town and its successors, assigns agents, contractors, and employees enjoy a non-exclusive right easement to enter the property for the purposes of constructing, reconstructing, maintaining, and repairing such.
Oh, your light went off again. There it
Do I
goes.
have to?
Ah.
See if that works. So anyway, I'm kind of curious about that statement. So essentially, if the owner defaults, the town of Peonia gets to finish the subdivision. I don't know if that's what that means, but it's kind of interest to me. And I also believe that this should be rezoned R1. The provisions that go through the CCRs.
It's off again. Or.
Thank you. Let's see.
Okay.
See if you do any.
Yeah,
Your desk.
You could take
Sorry.
Mr. King.
Is that? Sorry. Please don't take this off my 3 minutes.
Yeah, timer stop. You're fine.
Thank you. Getting back, I really feel like this subdivision needs to be rezoned as R1, as the Planning Commission had voted for, simply because I don't believe, well, by doing what the administrator has recommended, you're creating a hybrid zoning designation. And it's either an R1 or an R2, and she said 1 or 2 dwellings. Well, I don't know what the dwelling means. Single, 2 family, 4. And a CCR is generally conducted between private entities, and the town has no control over that. And I don't believe that plat notes is the place where you would supersede a zoning, a predefined zoning classification. So I don't think it's appropriate to try to do this through other mechanisms that aren't really legal. I think it'd be better to make it R1. And I also wanted to bring to the board's attention the section in 17-5-30, final plat. The purpose of the final map or plat for annexation or subdivision is to provide a legal document that would be a part of town and county records describing the development conditions and land descriptions for the property. The final plat application shall include all binding agreements between the owners and the town. And my point is that this document that has been provided to the public and you all does not have the most current binding agreements. And I don't believe, based on this ordinance, that you can approve something without seeing those other documents in here that are old. So, thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
Can, can I just clarify that?
Yes, please do.
This is a preliminary plat hearing. So once we provide the preliminary plat approval, the direction then is to, in the event the town provides the preliminary plat approval, the direction is to the town, to the applicant to go move forward with putting in the infrastructure. They have a year to come back and come to final plat. So that's not the area that we're operating under here with respect to the final plat.
Okay, thank you, Bo. Yes, Suzanne.
Suzanne Watson, 903 2nd Street. So I think some of the confusion about preliminary and final plat is if you look at page 54 in your packet in the administrator's notes, it says that this is a concurrent preliminary and final plat review. Furthermore, on page 38, number 8, it says preliminary plan reviewed for final concurrent review. Concurrent means at the same time, does it not? So it's a little confusing about what we're doing here tonight. I don't think it's been well described. I'm wondering about what is phase one now. What it was described on the slideshow, I think, is a little different. Is it lots 1 and 2? I think there's an emergency exit onto 133 now that was not included in the traffic study. So how does the highway department feel about having an entrance onto 133? I'm not quite sure where that's all going to happen. I am concerned about bonding. What if there are no water taps to complete this development? I mean, are they going to start building the gravel roads into the place and then they don't have the money to complete it? Where's the turnaround going to be if it's just phase one that ever gets completed? I'm a little bit concerned with the state of the water at this point and the fact that it wasn't considered in the Development Review Committee, which I'm not sure was ever chosen by the board. That's something the board chooses by our code. And then there was one final note. Oh, the 100-year floodplain. I suggest moving that out of the building code because it's a land development code. It has to do with people's property use in the floodplain. And Ken Knight had that floodplain development taken out of Chapter 16 and put into 18. And along with the appeals board, that's involved with floodplain development and review. And it's going to be really important for us to look at that and put it back in the land development code, which is the zoning code now. Building code is a lot different. There's less noticing and review involved. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, please do, sir, Frederick.
So the one thing I can comment on that is that emergency exit to 133 has been there. When was that easement granted? Yeah, but that's been there since when? Long time. Yeah, it's been there since previous versions of the development. So that's not a new piece. It wasn't included in some part of the more current information, but it's been there the whole time.
Okay.
So the highway department, everybody knows what's going on.
Okay.
Prior to that emergency exit being implemented, are you going to get a highway access permit? Because I understand that you need an access permit just to put a driveway onto the highway.
We wouldn't put a driveway onto the highway. There already is a driveway, and all we're doing is connecting from our property. It's in case the Price Road exit is blocked, there would be access through their property from their driveway.
Well, as development goes on Highway 133, the highway department has become more stringent. You're changing the prior use of that from just whatever it was now to potentially it could be multiple trips out of there. And so I think that you're you should have a conversation with the highway department, so we have some clarification on that.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Yeah, Ben.
My comments purely related to trying to increase public access on the Gunnison River, and I think that this development gives us an opportunity to connect a segment of trail that that would be very beneficial to the public. I want to make sure that the trail is in whatever final board document that gets approved, and like I said prior, to try to put the trail in with town support. You know, the Nature Connection would love to work with the town to make sure that we can get the trail both built and also work out maintenance issues with the trail. It's about 900 feet of soft surface trail that would be planned. And so, you know, I'm in support of the trail. I would love to see that trail happen, and I think it'd be a huge benefit to the kids in our community, teachers as well, seeing that we now will have an elementary school that could have direct access to a library, all on a walking path. So.
Thank you, Ben. Anything else from the public? Yes.
I just wanted to bring the board's attention to state statute CRS 29-20-301, which sets out, it's really a loose requirement, but the state wants to make sure that for any land development that you guys are looking at, the developer needs to show you that there's adequate water supply for their development. And when that happens, how it happens, and the details of it are basically up to you guys. But just so you know, you should have some documentation of adequate water supply for anything that you approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Anything else from the public? Yes, Christine.
Christina Patterson. I too am very confused with the packet, which held so much of the old information from 10 years ago, and then also this presentation was, you know, not accurate at all, but I appreciate there was something. I think that also very confused about this preliminary / final. I thought there was sort of, the phases were like 5 steps so that we could all like really hear and take in what is going on. This is the most major development that's happened in Peonia in the last decade, and I think it's really important to just slow it down and have the town really get what it wants from this, really develop it well. I don't know if any of you have been to that property, but it is so super beautiful. It is the last vestige of the elk migrations, huge deer populations, eagles, vultures, lots of birds, wetlands. It's all there. It's beautiful, and it should be developed very slowly and well. And there should be the paths. I would love to see a plat map with the plat of the walking paths and the bike paths on there. I would love to see everything ironed out well before it's like just pushed and fast-paced. I don't think that's even necessary for this. It could go back to planning and zoning after this. It can come back to you. I would love to see a timeline. I mean, is there some deadline that where everything's being sort of rushed for it? So those are my concerns. I also am concerned about that we don't know, that the town doesn't know how much it's going to cost to maintain those roads. And I think that should be like in front of you, really. So, and also the R2 to R1, because in good faith, if that's what is actually going on with that plat, and you're having 15 homes, an acre each, then that reasonably should just be rezoned to R1, so nothing else can happen. Evo is a developer in Holland. He's been in this country, I don't know how, you know, if he's been to Peonia a lot or knows the town, but he could sell that parcel. It could go into someone's hands. If it's R2, they can develop it to apartments and duplexes, and that's not what that that's not what that land would be good for. So I think that is it, apart from the water issue. And thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. Anything else from the public? Yes.
Hi, Barry Smith, Price Road. I concur with everything that was just said, +1 on all of that. I would like to see this really slowed down and given some real consideration. I've also spent some time on that property accessing the Feldman Ditch. I'm concerned that the proposed solution to the wetlands is to just make them dry and have them called something else. The biking across the bridge by the library is very sketchy. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to bike across that. It's scary. It's going to need some work. It's even a little scary to walk on, really. So that's part of the whole biking, which I'm pro-biking. That's going to need some work and some consideration. I would like to know, it feels like there's a lot of contingencies here that once it's approved, then we'll know this. Once it's approved, then we'll know that. The cost of this, the cost of that. I would like to encourage you all to have some good information so you know what you're voting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Yes, Frederick.
Just to clarify, how long has this process been going on?
This iteration has been ongoing since 2000, well, it began with 2017.
Okay, so, I mean, that seemed pretty adequate amount of time, to be fair to everyone. Just to be clear, Ivo is not a developer. He's a person that lived in Colorado for 10 years. He found this property with Hal and some other people, thought it was a beautiful, beautiful property, and has held the property for a long time. It could have been sold to any number of different people in between. He's had a vision for that property. He had a larger vision, thinking that 50 home sites was a benefit to Peonia. He pointed out that it's a density equivalent to downtown Peonia, so that would seem to make sense on some level. In meetings with the neighbors, it was made clear that they were not happy with that. It was a big issue, and so he, of his own volition, turned it into a 15-lot development. That it's 1 acre parcels. It's a piece of property for people to own, to appreciate that ground, because she's absolutely correct. It's a beautiful place. But I just want to be clear, it's not like some person that's just developing the property to get his money out of it and doesn't care what's going to happen. So I just think that's fair to him, because he's really stayed the course on this thing. He's done all the things that were asked of him. He's been patient. So it's to be fair, I think.
Thank you, Frederick. All right, I give you 1 minute each.
I have a procedural question. So what are the options that the board has tonight? What could you vote on? What are the options? I mean, I'm not clear. I don't know if anybody else is clear. You know, when you're doing a preliminary plat review, you're doing a phased development. Surely you're not approving the second phase before the first phase is done. But I'm wondering if someone can clarify what options the board has. What are the various scenarios? Thanks.
Please do.
So from a building standpoint, you absolutely want to look at and approve all phases of a project. You don't want to build and conceive of one phase with the idea that then you're going to add on later, because there's connectivity, and you want to be as efficient and effective as you can in making sure you're creating the entire, concept that you're going for. So it's practical from a planning standpoint to do the whole thing.
Okay. Thank you, Frederick. Suzanne, you're pushing the limits here.
Okay, but I mean, as he talked about this phase thing, but what I'm hearing is they might not be able to complete all phases if the water study doesn't come through. So how can you approve all phases and commit to things yourselves when the developer might not actually be able to commit to everything Thanks.
Okay. Did you want to comment on that, Bo, as to what we're actually voting on tonight?
So the trustees have three options. You can approve the major subdivision as submitted, you can approve it with conditions, or you can deny it.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Thank you, Bo. All right, Christine, 1 minute.
Is there a fourth option that you can approve or approve with conditions, or you can table it till there's more information that comes in?
In theory, I think you guys could remand it back to the Planning Commission. That becomes a little bit difficult, but I would say it's not necessarily the best approach to table it, because if new information comes in, that would be information that just would be reviewed by the trustees and not through the Planning Commission.
And one more thing. So when you get a plat map that has all the details and exactly what the developer is going to do with the 15 lots, what if they do something different? What is the recourse of the town?
Turn on your mic, Bo.
Again, with the caveat that I don't generally like to provide legal advice in an open meeting, if they don't go to final plat, they're not getting to get a building permit.
Yep.
So.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I could provide some clarification on the zoning. While through conversation with the town attorney, yes, the restrictions to the development and subdividing of the property can be done via the final plat. Staff doesn't have an objection should the board choose to rezone to R1.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Frederick.
So one question on the rezoning. Evo pointed out that the R2 zone classification was part of the annexation agreement. That was part of the agreement that was made with the town when he agreed to annex. So it seems disingenuous now when he's actually going to use the property to attempt to change the zoning. It just seems unfair.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions? Because if there are not, I'm going to close the hearing. Anything from the staff, anything from the public? 1 minute.
First of all, by definition, Evo is a developer. He is developing. So I don't know why we'd want to try to change that definition. And he was not present at the final planning and zoning meeting. So we did not get to hear from him or speak to him or have him answer our questions.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything from the board?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please do.
To be fair to the conversation, I respect people have reservations. I think it's pertinent to point out there are two people in the room that are neighbors that have issues with the project, that have had issues with the project in any iteration you're going to come up with. I don't know if these folks would be happy no matter, they don't want to see the property developed. So I appreciate their perspective, but I think the perspective has to be considered, in that reference. There was another member who was here that was unhappy, Daphne Salone, who has since sold her property. So she's not here anymore. But I just think it makes the point of, it's very few people that have these concerns, valid as some of them may be, but I think we need to look at the larger community. You don't see 50 people in here saying this is the largest thing that's happened in Peonia, and is it really good, and we need to slow down, et cetera. So just for perspective.
Okay, thank you. Come on, now, I'm going to give 30 seconds. That's all you're going to get. We're not going to have a continued argument here over whatever.
I appreciate that. I don't want to argue. I just don't want someone else to come up here and state what my position is. That's very unfair.
Okay, thank you. Next.
I want to speak to the zoning. When it was first zoned R2, there was a plan to have a PUD there, which was quite large. Now the property was split. Half of it is, part of the old development is now a hops farm. They got a variance to get a hops farm, and now we're talking about a low-density development. And I'm wondering if R2 for all of that area is even appropriate anymore. I think the way things have changed here in Peonia, I think it's wise to look at the zoning and
Okay.
as far as
Point taken.
how it's,
Thank you, Suzanne.
yeah, I can't finish. I can't think of the word.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, Christine.
I too appreciate not having words being put into my mouth because I think it's a great plan, the 15 houses. I really appreciate that with the green buffers. I thought 60 houses back there or 55, that original plan. I originally loved the idea of the eco-village back there, so I was very excited about that. But I couldn't help what happened with the developers and the breakup and the iterations of it. And now we're back to the 15, and I appreciate that. I have no problem with that. Historically, the last development that happened, it was outlined to be a certain way, and it turned out nothing like that. So that is really my only concern with that. I would love to see, which sort of makes just common sense to me, what is the final plat? Where is the bike trail? And what exactly the covenants are, outlined so comprehensively and clearly that you could just go like, oh, these are the most important 25 pages of the packet, not the old iterations of things. And here I can really see clearly what is going to be developed.
Okay, thank you. All right. I am going to go ahead and close this hearing. So it is now closed. Now we have deliberation by the board. Yes, Bill.
Mayor, I'd like to hear from the town administrator on the variances requested, or what are the variances that are being requested? I know it's in the notes somewhere, but
Yeah,
I can't
just-
really pick it up
I'm
here.
getting it.
I gave it to Bill.
Okay, but I'm happy to say it for,
I have it printed out.
Well, don't we normally vote on all the variances?
Yes.
yes, yes,
So can we just start at the top and,
yes.
Go for it.
So, let's see.
these are variances?
Right, so
Yeah, but-
recommends,
I know, but those are recommendations. What are
but
the?
it is the variance would be,
Okay, okay, here's the first one.
okay.
The first one is a variance in road width and length with the cul-de-sac. So I guess I don't have any question about the road length and the cul-de-sac.
Do you want to make a motion to accept that variance?
I would make a motion that we accept variance number 1, road width and length.
Do I hear a second?
Can I request clarification? Are you
All right, yeah.
Are you making a motion to accept it the way that it's recommended by staff, or just specifically the length of the road?
Okay, the commission recommends approval as presented by the administrator. Recommendation is to approve variances with the following modification. Emergency turnaround location between Riverbank Lot 2 and 5, which is currently have a 35-foot shared utility ditch easement. So I think that my movement would be just to incorporate your recommendations.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Discussion. Michelle?
If we approve a variance, are we saying that we are approving the development with that variance?
Yes. No, we're just approving that. We will do an overall approval or not with variances or with recommendations. With recommendations or not. So we're just saying, okay, we're looking at this variance so that in the end we would approve with variances.
So we're saying we agree with this recommendation, but
Right.
we are going to have a larger discussion on the overall
Right.
development. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the roadway recommendations. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, Bill, you want to do another one?
Yes, my variance number 2, change in typical road section And the bulk of it is, in lieu of the variance, defer installation of sidewalk, curb, and gutter until such time as 50% of the parcels are sold and or developed. Stormwater runoff should be collected in intermittent collection boxes and piped to detention ponds. I move that we deny this variance. I think that the town is putting itself in a position where we will have an undeveloped or unpaved road, no streets, no paved street, no curbs, no gutters at the end of this project. And I would hate to see this project get started and then have that 50% of the way done and realize that there is no money, or the current developer or owner does not have the funds to continue. I think that the time to get this job done is before the project starts. So I move that we do not allow any development there until these roads and streets and gutters are installed.
Okay, do I hear a second on that motion?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion from the board? Yes, Michelle.
Just for clarification, are you saying that the entire length of road for all phases, including all sidewalks and gutters, would need to be complete before any single lot is developed?
Yes, essentially that's what I'm saying, because if we allow this project to go for 50% development or some development without it being done, there's potential that it won't get done. And I think this is fairly common in most cities and stuff where you see the development come in. They laid out all their infrastructure and their utility lines are in place prior to building. I think it's something we have to do. Like I say, this has happened at Hawkshaven, or there's a gravel road up here today where there should have been a paved road. For various business reasons, the entity, I don't know what the entity was, went through bankruptcy, and that requirement was deleted. And I hate to see that happen here. Future owners of these lots are going to expect Peonia to treat them like every other citizen and have a decent street. And without it getting required up front, I don't think it'll happen.
Okay, other comments from the board? Michelle.
Sorry, Dave can go ahead. I don't want to.
I'm glad that Citizen Hal Brill is here, because I would like to have a recount of how Creek Vista came to be, because I believe the sidewalks and paving had to be built before the development happened. But I don't know for sure. So I'd like to hear that piece.
Mayor?
Yeah, no, we can't, we have to reopen the hearing if we're going to do that.
So if you want that discussion, one, I think that's outside the scope of this
Right,
public hearing.
definitely.
Two, if you are looking for public discussion, you need to reopen the public comment period. So that would need a motion and a second.
And we have a motion and second on the board right now.
I think we just have a motion from the bill.
No, I think we had at least 2 seconds.
And then one other thing is the trustees might want to consider either, getting security with respect to an interest in real property. I mean, there's alternatives to just having that completion. You could get a bond in place, or you could get, the security with respect to an interest in the real property. So those are other avenue or aspects that could be considered.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, please.
But the town is not in the development. We don't want a security in somebody else's property. We just want it to be acceptable to be brought into town.
And I'm not trying to debate it. I'm just trying to make sure that the trustees are aware that there's other options that are available.
Okay.
Because, Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
what I would add from the staff perspective, the issues that I see with that, one, are in a typical situation of development, I would completely agree that we would want to have that happening at the same time of the development. But under the circumstances where this entire process could only be approved contingent upon phase 1 only because of the water tap moratorium, I wouldn't necessarily want a road potentially to nowhere for an extended period of time that the town would have to take over being installed, nor would I want the road installed prior to construction of potentially 15 lots, houses, which would require a substantial amount of heavy equipment and operations traveling over that section of property. And so I would suggest the board look into other mechanisms such as bond for the implementation and installation of the road, sidewalk, curb, and gutter.
Other comments from the board? Yeah.
I was just looking at the engineering report that's in here. It's going to be very costly to build this road because of the high water table, and you have to scrape out the sandy stuff and put in 3 feet of this, compact it, and then do some more on top. And so I imagine if it's built right, it shouldn't be that difficult to maintain, but it's going to be very difficult to build it in the first place. So I can understand wanting to sell some lots first to get some money to do it. So I would really like to have the bond in place so that the town has its surety and the builder has some leeway.
Thank you, Karen. Other comments from the board? All right, Michelle?
Yeah, I mostly echo Trustee Buttinger's position on this. I think it's a bit of a chicken or an egg problem because I do think the board needs assurance that the road will be constructed properly. But I also think that staff is correct that we don't want to potentially end up with a road to nowhere that we're then required to maintain. And another concern with that is if the developer is not able to move forward, having that full 1,700-foot road in place is going to limit any potential future development on that property to a very similar design. And I would like to see the flexibility maintained if, potentially we're not going to have the water for this development to even happen. So it needs to be flexible for other use, I think, until they know for sure that they're moving forward. So I would support a bond sufficient to ensure that that the entire road can be completed.
Bill?
Well, I'd be real curious about the bond, how much, who's going to issue the bond, and who is standing behind the bond.
Okay, other board discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of oh, I'm sorry, Tammy, I didn't see you.
My hand wasn't up. Can you please state the motion prior to the vote? I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
So the motion is to deny the variance that would defer installation of sidewalk, curb, and gutter until such a time as 50% of the parcels are sold and or developed. Did you have a comment on that? Okay. So all in favor of, yes, Michelle.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that motion because the variance was not the 50%. That was a suggested modification should the town not approve the variance. So those are two separate things, I think.
I believe, okay, so then Amanda, can you read the motion?
It was to deny variance number 2 and not allow any development until road, sidewalk, curb, and gutters were installed.
Okay, thank you. All right. The mayor stands amended. All right. All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion fails. Would someone like to make another motion on this?
Didn't say anything about roads. It said sidewalk, curbs, and gutters.
Well, the road's part of that.
Well, just a comment, how are we going to guarantee that that road and all that stuff gets constructed? How much are you going to make the bond for?
$1 million bucks.
The cost associated would be determined by the town's engineer that reviewed the plan.
Yeah, I think that doesn't offer much security, but I guess it's the board's will.
All right. Does the board want to make any other motions prior to making a motion to accept this with conditions? Michelle?
Yeah, I would still make a motion that we deny variance 2, but I personally feel that we need more information about what a bond would look like to secure the town as far as the road goes, or what alternative modifications the developer might be open to.
So that your motion, okay,
So my motion would be to deny variance 2.
okay. So we have a motion and a second to deny variance 2. Discussion on that. All right, seeing that, yeah, Dave.
What's the difference between what we're voting on now and what we just voted on?
That's a good question.
My motion doesn't specify anything about the actual timeline for the road construction. All I'm doing is denying the variance that would have eliminated curbs and sidewalks.
Wait. All right, yeah, I'm confused on this one as well.
Well, I don't really want to comment on the motion, but potentially what could happen is that provided this variance is denied, you could then potentially direct staff to work with the developer on the SIA to include the bonded amount or an escrow payment for the deferred work, or some additional security with respect to an interest in one of the lots, which that SIA would come back to the trustees for review at a later date.
Okay. So at this point, we have a motion to deny variance 2. We have a second. Yes, Corinne.
I was just going to offer, because you said you were confused about what the variance was, if you wanted clarification on what variance 2 is.
Yes, please.
Okay, so section 17440J in the municipal code states that all public and private streets have curbs and gutters shall be laid out and graded, and it goes into how the streets, curbs, and gutters are, how they're built and installed. And so what the variance in the application was to receive a variance so that curbs, gutters, sidewalks, curbs, and gutters were not required to be installed in the development. That was the variance.
Okay. All right, everybody clear?
Well, that begs the question, is the road going to be developed then?
The road has always been in the application to be developed. This variance is specific to the sidewalk, curb, and gutter.
Okay, so the road is developed and built prior to the development.
No, the roads are not built prior to the development. The roads are built after the development. After the construction occurs on the lots, the last thing you do is the road and sidewalk, curb, and gutter.
All right, any further discussion from the board? All right, all in favor of denying variance 2?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. So now we have a couple of other issues to look at, and one is to zone it R1 or keep it R2.
I move that we rezone the property as R1 in line with the low density intent for the development.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion?
I second.
Just to be clear, we can't rezone the property through this process. It would be the recommendation that the approval is subject to the rezone.
Consider my motion so modified.
Okay. Second still, Bill? Yes. All right, any discussion on that? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And then the only other thing left is we recommend that development beyond Phase 1 be prohibited until water taps are available. So that is, the rest of the development is contingent on the availability of water taps. Yes, Michelle.
So I have a question on what that means exactly, because let's say the water study comes back, and this is purely hypothetical,
right.
To be clear, but let's say it comes back and says, we have adequate water to support 10 additional taps for the town. If we have approved this subject to the availability of water, are we then obligated to provide those 10 taps to this development? So are we tying our hands in that situation?
That's a very good question.
No, I mean, might be my interpretation that it's still a first come, first served basis,
Okay.
so.
And of course, the moratorium, the water tap moratorium would have to be modified or rescinded before any tap availability that's determined through the study would become legitimate. Just because the study says it doesn't mean that we then would have those taps available. The board would have to modify or rescind the water tap moratorium ordinance.
Okay, so just to be super clear on this, if we rescind our water tap moratorium, what happens next is that we review water tap applications on a first come, first served basis. Is that accurate? Does that?
Yeah, potentially. I think that the better way to answer your question is that I don't see that this would create a vested right in any sort of future water taps in the event that that's the direction that's provided.
Okay, so in the event of a very limited number of water taps or a requirement to get us to a certain number of water taps, we are in no way obligated to take particular action to support the remainder of this development. Okay.
Okay. You made a motion, correct? No. Did somebody want to make a motion on this?
I'd like to make a motion that we prohibit development beyond phase 1 until the water tap moratorium is lifted and water taps are purchased for the properties.
Okay, do I hear a second? Discussion. Yes, Michelle.
Sorry, I'm
Okay.
gonna let somebody else go. I need a minute on.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Oh, wait.
All right, I'm gonna try to get my thoughts out. So, I appreciate what Mr. Zimmer said about the efficiency of approving an entire subdivision at once rather than doing it in pieces, and there's continuity related to that. However, I feel extremely uncomfortable approving any development when we don't know what our water future looks like. So I would ignore personally parcels 3 through 16 and say we are approving parcels 1 and 2. If the developer wants to come back at a future date with additional parcels, additional development requests, then that would be a separate request. But I am just extremely reluctant to approve a development for something that we can't even guarantee that we can allow.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. So now I guess we are down, what?
Sorry, could you repeat what that motion was? I was very confused.
That commission recommends that development beyond phase 1 be prohibited until water taps are available.
Not specifically, until the moratorium is lifted and
Okay.
water taps for the properties are purchased.
Okay. Yes.
So to clarify, does that mean we are approving the 16 lot development?
No, we're
contingent?
just
We're only approving
development of parcels 1 and 2 until water taps are purchased and available.
So if water taps become available, the developer would need to come back through this process?
No.
So then we are approving the entire thing?
No.
No, not yet.
It was just that what was approved was the recognition of the moratorium.
Right.
That there could only be the taps for 1 and 2 at this point in time.
Right, that's all we're voting on.
There hasn't been an overall approval of
Right,
the development.
that's
This is not the overall,
This
okay,
is-
I'm
yeah.
very sorry, I vote yay on that.
Okay, do we have all our votes counted, Amanda? All right, now we come down to,
I'd like to ask Travis a question.
sure,
Travis, you currently have a water line that runs across the river to service the homes in that area. With the development of this subdivision, do you have intentions of increasing that line size, or are you going to continue to service all these homes off that existing line?
The line that goes into the subdivision is a 8-inch line supplied by a 6-inch line, which is already into their subdivision for taps.
Okay,
That
so
is-
you don't anticipate any additional development? And that
No.
was just for personal edification?
Okay.
Doesn't mean
No.
anything to this?
No No additional.
Okay. All right, now we come down, whoops, Dave.
I'm not clear on that answer. It's an 8-inch line serviced by a 6-inch line? Is that what I heard?
No.
Correct.
So a smaller line is servicing a larger line.
Correct.
So I don't see how that means we would never have to change it. It seems like the lines need to be.
I think what Travis is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Travis, is that the 6-inch line is sufficient to do that many homes. And that, yeah, we don't need to put in a bigger line because we're only approving 15 homes and that line is sufficient for 15 homes. All right. Okay, now we come down to the final thing. So we have a couple of conditions. So we can approve with conditions. We can deny approval overall. Or, as Bo suggested, we do have the ability to remand it back to the Planning Commission, though there may be some steps involved in that, Bo, beyond just the board saying it should go back to planning.
Yeah, I think you should provide some additional direction both to staff and to the applicant, and if there's other areas that you'd want the Planning Commission to take a look at.
So that they would need to look at other things
Right.
that we have. Okay. All right, would someone like to make a motion along one of those lines?
Well, I guess I'm a little bit lost in that, but I moved that we send it back for further,
Okay, and what do you want them to look at?
well, one thing we talked about the bonding and all of that, that hasn't been presented to us how that's going to be yet. That needs to be reviewed and brought back to us for final approval. I think that was really the only sticking point that I had.
Okay, so we have a motion to send this back to Planning Commission that they should look at the bonding issue. Yes, Tammy.
I think there were a couple of others, and that is just the, what do I want to say? The discrepancy between the concurrent preliminary and final review, and that this is not a final approval of the plat. Have we already gotten past that, or I'm still confused on that one?
That was a terminology issue in what I wrote. Ultimately, it was the final review of the application as it's submitted, but the preliminary plat they'll have to come back with the final plat for the approval, including all of the variances and modifications that have been recommended by the board.
So would that include a letter or some sort of communication from CDOT that the changing of the prior use of the access road is okay with them? Would that be part of that?
I mean, you can ask the Planning Commission consider that, but that would be between the developer and CDOT, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do you want to amend Bill's motion then to add the road piece to that? Because we don't have a second on it anyway.
We don't have, okay. Yeah, I move that we amend the motion to require, am I requiring the clarification from the Highway Department? To add clarification from the Highway Department regarding the changing of prior use of the access road to Highway 133.
Okay. So we have it sent back to the Planning Commission to look at bonding and to make sure that there's approval from, or to get assurance from the planner that there is access to 133 and it's okay with CDOT. Dave.
I'm wondering if this can be a staff report rather than sending it back to planning and zoning.
That's up to the board. Is this something that staff could do?
I think staff could address through the SIA could address the bonding issue. That comes back to the council for approval. And that's not being approved this evening with the preliminary plat. And we could incorporate some, you know, certainly we'd have to have the discussion with the developer in terms of, you know, the surety bond, what the scope would be. We'd confer with Brandon at SGM in terms of the engineering for the roads to cover that. Now, that could be a discussion before the Planning Commission, or it can be incorporated into an SIA that would be for the council, for the trustees to review.
Yes, Bill.
Well, I would recommend the Planning Commission so as the public has a chance for input. And that's why I would think it should go back to them and then brought back to us.
Okay. Any further discussion on this motion? Yes, Dave.
It's just a general discussion. If I'm understanding it right, there are 2 lots with water taps and sewer taps right now that they'd like to develop.
Yeah.
And also, you want to put the water and sewer lines in right away. So that's kind of like phase 1. And so for me, just I'm talking personally where I'm coming from, I'm good with the road being gravelled and stuff like that up to that point. Then as soon as they want to start selling lots, then we kick in the bond and the other things to ensure that the road's being built up to our specifications. But at least for those first 2 lots, what I want to do is allow the owner to proceed with building on those 2 lots where they already have taps and they already have access. And for 2 lots, a gravel road's no big deal. Then if they want to go on, that's when we kick in the bond, the rest of that stuff. So I'm just trying to get it reasonable for the owner to be able to build on that lot that he has basically everything in place, but also making sure the water and sewer lines are going in as needed. You know, they can stub them out after lot 1 and 2. And then if the moratorium goes, see, that's why I'm trying to simplify this at this stage for the reality of what we have. So that's just a suggestion.
Okay, other discussion? Yes, Michelle.
I agree with that. And I think the simplest thing would be, well, maybe not the simplest in terms of work on the developer side, but I would like to see a proposal for just lots 1 and 2, because lots 1 and 2 are what we can approve.
Yes, Bill.
A point of order here, we have a motion to
Right.
send it back to consider the bonding and the road. If you want to make further motions, I think we should.
No, I think we need to resolve this motion first before we
I
made
agree.
any further motions.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay, well, and just to put my 2 cents in, you know, I think sending it back to the Planning Commission is, I think that's just redundant. I mean, we're at it again. And I don't think that that really is the way to address this. And that's just my 2 cents. All right. We have a motion and a second to send this back to Planning Commission. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did have a second. Oh, right. Right, okay. So let's.
I will second Tammy's motion.
All right, all in favor of Tammy's amended motion to add the, what was it? Oh, the road. Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion passes. Then we go to Bill's motion, which is to send it back to the Planning Commission with the 2 issues. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, would someone like to make another motion then? Oh, turn your back on.
Can I go now, Madam Mayor?
Yes,
Okay.
your mic is on. You're okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve, let's see now, approve development in lots 1 and 2 with water and sewer. Maybe that's all I need to say.
Okay, approved developments of lots 1 and 2.
Right.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion. Yes.
Yeah, I procedurally, I think we would have a really hard time doing that because we have a major subdivision application that's before the trustees for consideration. We've got lot 1 and 2 that are already in place with respect to a recognized platted lot. So I think in essence, you would be just, the better approach would be to deny the application with the direction in terms of some areas that you look at for lots 3 through 15. Yeah. The other thing that can be considered is you can build phasing into the subdivision improvement agreement with respect to if you wanted a time frame for when there should be the completion on the road for lot 1 and the infrastructure, and then where you stub out the water and sewer taps. Those could also be components that would be built into that subdivision improvement agreement.
Okay. Nick?
Isn't there already phasing in this subdivision? Isn't lot 1 and 2 considered phase 1? And then the other is phase 2? Isn't that correct?
Yes, so to provide a little history there, so there was a minor subdivision that was approved, and that included lot 1 and lot 2. And so he technically already has approval for lot 1 and lot 2 through the minor subdivision process that took place several years ago. He's included those in as that first phase because this application process started prior to the water tap moratorium, and what he's looking for is just to move through this process and get to the final approval of the subdivision in its entirety so that that's done, that part is done, because he has been in and out of this process since approximately 2006 or 2007 with the initial large development. And so what we were speaking about with the staged SIA is more specific to what Trustee Knutson was stating about approving the plan and allowing phase 1 to be implemented prior to requirement for bonding for the road. So that could be part of, you complete phase 1, and at the start of phase 2, before any approvals, you have to have the bonding situation in the SIA outlined for the road, sidewalk, curb, and gutter.
Okay. Did you have something to say, Karen?
The Planning Commission did review this, and the Planning Commission made a recommendation to bring to the board. And the recommendation was to approve the application with conditions, and for lots 1 and 2 only. And the conditions were the raising of the moratorium, lifting of the moratorium, and changing the zoning from R2 to R1. We did not add the highway or the bonding in that recommendation. So it's just for information.
Okay. Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, so I want to be clear that I'm not opposed to this subdivision. I think it's a good size. I think the developer's been really receptive to what the town wants to see, and I appreciate that the developer has been working on this for a very long time. At the same time, we don't know when the water moratorium might be lifted. We don't know what the town's going to look like at that time, or even what our board is going to look like at that time. So do we have a motion on the table? No?
We do. Would you read the motion?
To approve development on lot 1 and 2 with water and sewer.
Okay. But that's
so that's
already
basically not approving the entire subdivision.
But hasn't that already been approved as the minor subdivision, so we wouldn't need to take any action for that specifically?
That I'm unclear on. Has that already been approved as a minor subdivision? And so he could go ahead and do that no matter what the board votes on. Okay, so that's already been approved.
Okay, so for the remainder, I would rather see it come back once the moratorium is lifted, then the developer can request the taps sufficient to develop, and it can be reviewed more completely at that time.
Okay, so we have Dave's motion to develop lots 1 and 2. All in favor of that one? Okay, opposed?
Nay.
I'll vote against my own motion.
Do you have all the votes, Amanda? Okay, and it fails, correct? Okay, that motion fails. Okay,
So I have a question.
yes.
When are we going to hear from the staff on recommendations for the bonding? Are we going to hear something on that?
Well, if the board wants us to, it gives direction for staff to do that as part of this process, we'll get that information and bring it back to the board, yes.
Okay, but it seems like right now we need to vote on to whether we're going to approve this subdivision or approve it with conditions or deny it.
Well, we discussed extensively how are we going to guarantee that this work gets done. We denied the motion to stop it until the
We denied the planning commission part of it.
we denied my first stab at the variance number 2. We did discuss having a bonding discussion to guarantee that this work gets done, and it seems like that is not going forward now at all. So we essentially are going to rely on the developer and the owner to build this road, and when it gets done, I guess it's up to them. I mean, we have no financial guarantee that it'll ever happen.
That, I don't disagree with that. The only thing that I would state is and I think this harkens back to what Trustee Knutson was getting at, is that ultimately, if the development doesn't happen, let me pull the map back up here. What was that? It looks like 180. Just so we can get a look at it. Sorry, it takes a minute for the map to reload. Okay. If the developer, if the moratorium's never lifted, or if the moratorium is lifted and it's lifted in such a way that the developer chooses not to move forward with phase 2 or phase 3, or the water's not available for him to move forward with phase 2 and phase 3, we're talking about 2 lots only right here that would be developed with the existing dirt road. So it would stop here. It would only be these 2 lots that would be developed. There wouldn't be any burden on the town financially for taking care of a road that goes all the way around to the cul-de-sac, because that road wouldn't be there. There would only be development of lot 1 and lot 2, which the developer can already do now, if he so chooses, through the minor subdivision that's already been approved.
Well, my comment on that is the overall plan has a stormwater management plan in place that includes a drainage structure, a pond. It essentially sits on undeveloped land now. How are you going to implement a stormwater management plan on that first phase?
I don't have an answer for that question.
I mean, I think
Turn on your mic, please.
from staff's perspective, we're not trying to advocate for this process one way or the other. I think all we're trying to do is explain some of the options that would be available to the trustees, and some of the areas where we're hearing there's concerns or you need some additional information. Certainly there can be some direction on that. Again, it's within the trustees' purview to say, no, we don't want to grant this variance and we want to operate within our code procedures, and absolutely you can proceed accordingly in that manner. Again, the whole goal from the staff's perspective is to make sure that you guys feel that you're comfortable with the options that are available.
Well, as it's laid out right now, I'm uncomfortable with it. If they have already through the minor subdivision right to develop lot 1 and lot 2, we really don't need to discuss that. They have that right. Essentially, we're talking about 3 through 15. And that's where my concern lies, is the rest of it.
So I think we need to come to some kind of decision as to whether we're going to approve this or whether we're going to deny this at this point in time. Yes.
I would move that we deny the application as presented, and if it's appropriate, recommend that the developer bring it back with more information after the moratorium's lifted.
Okay, we have a motion to deny. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, can we have an alternative motion then?
Mayor?
Yes.
Can I do a roll call?
Oh, sure. Can we do, yeah, roll call?
Trustee Budinger? Trustee Johnson?
Nay.
Trustee Bear? Trustee Knudsen?
Nay.
Trustee Meck?
Nay.
Trustee Pattison?
Aye.
Okay, that motion fails. All right, so then I would suggest that a secondary motion would be that we approve the subdivision with conditions as already outlined, and that the SIA, the final SIA, come back with bonding that will address the board's concerns about the road. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. All right, seeing none, all in favor? Wait, whoa, whoa.
Both of us want to ensure that the moratorium is a part of this.
Right, and that's part of the
That we
condition.
voted on that already.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
already
okay.
part of the conditions. All
Now
right.
we're more confident.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Do you need a roll call again, Amanda? Oh, okay, that we approve the subdivision with the conditions already noted, and that the staff will ensure that the SIA contains the bonding requirements as asked for by the board. Okay.
Trustee Budinger? Oh, am I doing roll call?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
What was that?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Long, torturous. All right, so we still have, next up on the agenda is the retail marijuana ordinance. Would we want to take a 5-minute break before we hit marijuana?
Move to take a break.
A second? All in favor? We're out of here. 5 minutes, people. I'm timing. Hey, Frederick. Do you think it would be possible, before you guys go into Hayes and do anything with that upstairs, if we could get a photographer up there to take pictures of that, if we could have a record for sure the town, the history of the building?
Yeah, we need to open things up a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, sure.
So,
And
yeah,
actually,
well,
Casper, my partner, is a photographer.
well, if Casper could take it, or Jim Brad, one of the two, and I'm sure he could bring lighting up that we could go ahead and we could, yeah, if we could get those photographs so we could archive them.
It looks like they just turned off the lights and left.
That's what Neil said. That's what Neil said, and I was so fascinated by the whole thing.
There's still the blue ranges and
Oh my God.
and the little water heaters right in the kitchen.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, if we could get some of those, because Stu Carlson's going to do a piece on that. So if we can get some pictures for that, that would be totally wonderful.
Telling me that this whole building is full all the way back to 5 generations.
Oh my God. I can't see how they're going to clean that thing out by the end of June.
Those two are an amazing duo.
That's true. That is so true.
Phenomenal people. I never knew him until, I've been working on this for like 4 years.
Oh, really?
He and I have been talking.
Ah.
And he said, I made a video where I was in shook hands.
Yeah, yeah.
He said, when I'm ready, you'll be the person. And good to his word. And this guy's amazing. He's got all the history. We have to use
Yes.
him because he's got an amazing memory. He's got all that information.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knows the whole history of who was where, when,
Oh my
why,
God, that's so
what
cool.
happened. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you going to do with it, Frederick?
Well, we're going to make all those apartments usable.
Yay.
So there are 5 apartments upstairs.
Oh, there's 5.
And another one downstairs.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, where Rick ran the pharmacy is his apartment.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
When he was a kid, he lived there.
Wow.
So we're going to take half of that space, or a little more than half of that space. Amy's going to move over there.
Oh, the circ.
And then we'll build an apartment at the back, so that
Yeah.
will eventually be a little workspace. And then we'll do all the apartments upstairs, and then that other giant space is perfect for a restaurant because
Oh, Frederick.
it's got its full basement.
Oh my God.
A restaurant could, have all their prep and everything downstairs, with its concrete floor, it would all.
Oh my God. That would be so cool.
In a hotel. No pressure, but, we're always trying to figure out something we can do to recognize Hayes and
Yes.
their family. Did you tell them that?
Oh, no, I didn't, but yes.
We did throw out the idea of potentially replacing the building or moving in the Hayes building or some kind of, it wouldn't be the business idea.
No, that's cool. Like we were just saying, I have so much respect for the council. I really got to know that. The building was the Kennedy.
Yes. That's got up there.
Which is neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that building was built by the Masons in 1902.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
That building is rock solid.
Ah.
I've got to use the restroom, but I just wanted to go flip moving just last.
All right, your 5 minutes, run, Karen. The 5 minutes is like up in 1 minute. God, I hope we don't have to do this very often. I hope we don't have to do this very often. What a do this very often. What a torturous process. All right.
That's part of the deal.
Yep. My computer's up. Oh, I'm missing 2 people. All right, I'll give them 1 minute. All right, we don't even have a quorum for the board to go back. Board!
You have a quorum.
1, 2, there. All right, I call this meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is Retail Marijuana Ordinance 2021-01, second read. So we have a red line copy in our packet. Does anyone have any comments or changes on that? Yes, Bill.
Well, in the red line, a version of it, in the third whereas, in line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you mentioned marijuana stores, and all the rest of the stuff mentioned marijuana establishments. I wasn't unsure what you were saying there, why that's different.
Let's see, so we have placing of marijuana establishments, limit the number of marijuana establishments, so taking regular marijuana stores within. So there is 1 extra stores in there, Bill, or Bo.
Yeah, I think it's just a tracking issue. I apologize. It should be establishment.
Okay, so that will get changed to establishments. Okay, other comments? Yes, Michelle.
So unless I'm misunderstanding, I think the definition of a block as presented here is different than what we discussed at the last meeting. So I wanted to go back and see if we can get that clarified again, because the definition here would set out a block as, for example, the area from 2nd Street to 3rd and from Main to Grand, everything in between that is a block. The way it's defined in this red line version is how I read that.
Yeah.
Whereas what we discussed at the last meeting was it would be either side of the street is part of the same block. So those are two different things.
Okay. Yeah, to me it reads the same. It's just a little clearer definition of what that is. But Corinne?
That was the intention, was to further define, although I do want to also, apologies if you already mentioned this while I was in the restroom, but there is also in the red line, you'll note on the side a notation that I included with the limitation of 3 as what 3 locations as determined by the board at the last meeting was a limitation of 1 per block, still necessary or the intention of the board. There was also was addressed in correspondence that was provided to the board from a community member. So when there was 6 locations the board was discussing, staff also agreed that it was prudent to restrict how many you had per block because you wouldn't necessarily want 6 in a row or them really in a dense location in the core commercial. But is that something the board still feels is a necessary restriction with the modification to only 3 locations?
The answer to that is yes, from me.
Do we want to make a motion on that?
Do we need one? Because right now,
No.
it doesn't need one.
Okay.
That's
All right,
our
so it's
intent.
done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's done. Other comments?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I still want to, I know this is nitpicky, but I want to make sure that we're clear and that we're all in agreement on what it means when we're restricting to a block.
Yeah.
So in the definition of
But
the red
we're
line,
not restricting to a block now.
we're not. We're taking that out.
Right. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought you just said that we're not going to do that.
I was asking if the board still wanted to restrict to 1 block since the reduced number from 6 to 3
Okay,
at the
so it
last meeting.
sounds like the board still wants to keep one, okay. All right, so it's in there, so unless somebody wants to change that, it's going to be 1 per block. Okay, now we're back to definition of a block.
Okay, so as it's written in the red line, the block is a piece of land bounded by streets and not traversed by a through street.
Right.
So from Main Street to Grand,
Right,
from 2nd to 3rd, that's 1 block.
right.
What we talked about at the last meeting was that the block was either side of Grand Avenue. So it would be from one side of Grand to the other, from 2nd to 3rd. So those are 2 different chunks of property within the town.
Well, it seems to me that the difference is that the second definition includes the streets that then cut it off, whereas the first definition did not include those. So the first definition said one side of Grand to the other side of Grand. That was the thing. And all that Corinne did, she added that, like from 2nd to 3rd, so that she squared that off versus just having 2 open ends.
So the way I read it with, and I may be wrong about this, correct me if I'm wrong, but since it says no traversing through streets,
right,
we could have a shop on, say, Grand and 2nd, and then we could have a shop on the other side of Grand and 2nd. So both on the east side and the west side, because those are defined as being in 2 separate blocks.
That's not the way I read it. Yeah. No. Yeah, and that's not the way I read it at all. Okay.
That's
right.
That's just not the way the current language reads, and I can draw it for you, but I don't have a good way to do that.
Do you have a recommended modification for the definition?
The way you had defined it previously, you specifically called out both sides of the street as part of the definition of a block, and I think that needs to be included if that's our intent. Because the way it reads now, and the way, if you look up the definition of a block, just Google that, it would not be both sides of Grand Avenue. It would be including the east side of Grand Avenue, the west side of Main.
Do you,
Was under the impression that it was per city block.
yeah,
I missed the discussion that it would be, you could have one on the opposite side
uh-uh,
of the street.
that's not what we're saying, yeah.
Okay.
You're right. They don't want that.
Okay.
Right,
For the 200 block.
right.
But they don't, but she's saying that the definition doesn't read that way with the modified definition.
Okay.
So I'm looking to see.
If you could even project up a map of the town, I can just circle with my finger what I'm talking about. I
Well,
just feel like
yeah,
a visual
but
would
we
help.
need- We need to have the verbiage that defines that, and, you know, to my understanding, that's what this verbiage said.
Right, I mean, it gets very, it's, because, I mean, like, the definition of a city block is a rectangular area in a city surrounded by streets and usually containing several buildings. It's very vague in,
But surrounded by streets, not with streets running through it. So
Okay.
where a street runs through it, that is the defined edge of the block.
so we can modify to this definition of a city block, which
Well,
is,
no, then it's not.
That's
But
not
are you-
accurate with
I-
the board's intent.
I mean, so the clarification would be, and then there would be like one per the 100 block and one per the 200 block. And so, yeah, right, yeah. Mhm.
So I think one of the things that's confusing about this is it's a piece of land, and we're describing it as a street
Right.
that is not bounded on both sides, and I think that may help the discussion, because what we're talking is about a city street bounded, that there can only be one shop on either side of that street.
Yep, bounded
that's-
by cross
That's
streets.
bounded by two cross streets.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I apologize because I missed it. I thought that the limitation was just per
oh,
block.
no.
I did not understand that from the minutes, that you didn't want pot shops across the street from each other.
Correct. We
Correct.
do not want that.
okay.
So let
So
me-
are we clear on that then?
So that definition can be updated to properly reflect that it's either side of the street.
I
Okay.
agree with your interpretation, and I was wrong. I thought it was, I didn't understand from the minutes that you guys wanted, like I said. So it does need to be updated.
Okay, all right. Yes, Dave.
We have a real issue for how we're going to enforce these licenses, because one of my neighbors brought up, okay, say someone has a recreational license, we approve that. And then a second one comes in with recreational license, and we approve that. The third one comes in and says, well, I don't want to have a marijuana, medical marijuana license. I just want to do recreation like the other two people. How are we going to enforce that we get one medical marijuana? That's the question. I
Okay,
think
and
it's a
see,
good
to
one.
me, it's written right there that we will issue up to 6 licenses, one of which has to be a medical marijuana license. It's in the
I'm
ordinance.
just,
Yeah, I know you're devil's advocating.
I could see like two people come in with
Right.
recreational and they get it, and then no one comes back. And we don't have our intent is to provide a medical marijuana license, at least one, along with recreational. So I'm wondering if the first license coming in has to be both in
Or
order to satisfy that
just medical.
requirement. Because that's what I think our long discussion was about, is
Right.
making sure we could provide that. Am I wrong?
I don't think you can force somebody to open a store.
We can't. We can control the licenses and say what kind of licenses we want. And if we only get 2 people who want to come in and do licenses, but the reality is we're probably going to have more than 2 people coming in and wanting licenses.
And what if no one wants medical?
Then we don't issue another license.
Yep, so be it.
Yeah, Michelle.
So I think I understand your concern that, say, we get 2 licenses that come in that are retail only and nobody else applies for a license, then we don't have a medical shop in town. Personally, I think we've still left the option open if a medical shop would want to open for business. So I think that's more a reflection at that point of what the market will serve. We're saying that we if someone else applies, it has to include medical, but not that we absolutely have to have a medical shop in town.
He's cogitating. Well, while Dave cogitates.
It's just that I thought people were pretty intense about making sure we had that provision for our citizens.
Well, and
you know?
their provision is
And-
we can't guarantee that that's going to happen, just like
Yeah.
we can't guarantee that Stop and Save will move and we'll never have another gas station.
Right.
I mean, we can't guarantee that. All we can do is basically lay it out as best we can in the ordinance.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking that maybe the first license has to be a combination and the other licenses don't have to be. But, you know, this way it ensures that there's a medical.
But then that only addresses one time,
Right.
period, in the entire history of this ordinance.
Yeah. But it accomplishes the goal. I mean, I'm not hot to trot on this. I just remember our discussion about wanting to make sure we provided this.
Okay.
That the only way I can see that we make sure we provide it is to ensure that the first application comes in with that combination. That's.
Let's take a little slide. Yeah. Okay, and we can, I mean, we can give preference to it. I like that. But,
And that, I mean, we have to be somewhat limited, but I think we've received direction at the staff level.
yeah, exactly. All right, others? All right. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I have a couple other comments. On page 406, we're missing the definition of spot zoning in the red line
Yes.
version, but it does exist on page 420, so I just want to make sure that those get,
I agree.
that's included.
Yeah, I caught that too.
Okay, I have another one. On page 411, sorry, I'm just trying to find my own call out here. There's a section that I'm sorry, I can't find it. It's going to take me a minute.
Okay. All right. Okay, can we get a motion on the table to accept this? Yeah, maybe this is Karen's job.
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the ordinance with the changes noted.
Okay, can we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Yes, Michelle.
Sorry, one more. I found my comment. Number 5 in the red line version, this is on page 411. It says, with the adjustments, there shall be one licensed facility per block. I think we want to specify that that's a maximum, not that we're requiring a facility on every block.
Okay. All right. All right. Anything from the public? All right. Paige.
Page Smith, 215 Delta. I just wanted to point out that under the, hang on, fourth whereas, where you intend to put in both ballot questions, only the second ballot question is provided, not the first one where the voters approve stores. That first one is missing from that whereas. And I know that was the intent since it still says 2. And then I just have one comment, and I had mentioned that I thought it would be good to have a definition for minor. And the comment from the town attorney was that minor is commonly understood definition to be under 18, which is true for medical marijuana, but you have to be 21 or older to buy recreational marijuana. And I just wanted to make that distinction so you're all aware of it and it's in the public record. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Suzanne.
Okay, Suzanne Watson, 903 2nd Street. And I sent you all a letter, but I'd like to read this for the benefit of the public. I'm concerned about zoning issues and the way you're passing this, this rule about 1 per block. The Colorado Constitution allows localities within their respective jurisdictions to regulate the time, place, and manner in which marijuana stores may operate and to limit the total number of marijuana stores. Peonia will be, number 1, limiting the number of total marijuana stores through licensing. 2, limiting business hours from 8 a.m. to midnight. 3, regulating the place in which retail marijuana can operate by limiting it to C1 and C2 districts. And 4, requiring a distance from schools as allowed by the Colorado marijuana regulations. Peonia has determined that retail marijuana is a retail use of property, and in the zoning chapter of the Peonia Municipal Code, retail uses have an unrestricted right to exist in the C1 and C2 zones. Zoning laws are enacted differently than laws passed in general ordinances. Since zoning laws affect the use of private property, they must follow a more specific process that requires public notice, public input, and careful deliberation. In this manner, zoning laws are less arbitrary, more fair, and can better stand challenges. My concern is that within the Peonia zoning chapter, there is no density restriction for retail uses. Therefore, the proposed retail marijuana ordinance goes too far by preempting the vested property right as it restricts 1 property owner per block to the specific retail use. A C1, C2 property owner who is denied their right in an ordinance created outside of the zoning chapter could conceivably claim a government takings of their property and file suit. Can Peonia afford litigation over this proposed ordinance? The Peonia trustees have a fiduciary duty to protect the financial interests of this town. Perhaps the limited number of licenses being offered adequately addresses the store density concerned. If the trustees would like to impose additional density restrictions on marijuana stores, please consider doing so through a proper zoning chapter amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, it is 9:18. Next up is the mayor's report. The mayor really doesn't have anything to report right now. Oh, I thought we voted. Oh, I'm sorry, Tammy.
The motion was not repeated, and we didn't get any chance to respond to someone who just said this could be a serious issue and result in lawsuits. I was hoping to discuss that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I thought that was done just a little too quickly. Like I say, it's nice to just slow down and breathe sometimes.
Okay.
And can we have a discussion on that, or am I too late? I didn't vote, so my vote, I'm not sure.
So, I mean, the ordinance passed.
Right.
Now,
the ordinance has passed.
If you'd like to have a discussion, you can request that. I would say I don't generally provide legal advice in an open meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Michelle.
I think it's important for all board members to be aware and participate in the vote. I would move that we rescind that last vote, have an opportunity for discussion, and re-vote if that's a possibility.
Can we do that?
Procedurally, I think it's passed. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly we can continue. If you guys want to have that discussion, we can certainly have that discussion.
Yeah, the vote has passed. The ordinance has passed.
So if the record would show that I did not vote, thank you.
Okay. You know, and yeah, if you want to go ahead and have that discussion, have that discussion. Just be aware, we still have, we're going to have to extend the meeting, and we still have an executive session on top of that. So, go ahead.
So, Bode, I know you don't give typically give legal advice in a meeting, but do you see any truth to this? Is this a possibility that somebody could come in and buy a piece of land and find out that the person next to them also bought a piece of land and they have decided to use that land that lot to have a marijuana store, and they put in their application, and this other person is already closed. He didn't know the other person was there, and what if he says, well, I bought this to put this store in, and now you're telling me no? What are you basing this on?
So generally, I would disagree with the categorization that was put forth. The Supreme Court has recognized, particularly where you're dealing with businesses, that there might be a nuisance attributed, liquor stores, adult stores, or adult businesses, that there's the ability to have these limitations, if you will. And I think that the limitations within the cap are sufficient, and it doesn't necessarily. Now, one of the concepts that we've had and we've discussed kind of throughout this process is, the first step is getting this in place. We have to go to Title IV, as we've talked about, to get the taxation in place. We'll also have to take a look at the criminal code. So there's going to be some code update provisions that are going to be kind of encompassing with all of this. Certainly happy to revisit that zoning issue, but on its face, I don't see that we've created a liability.
Okay, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, and I apologize for passing up on that, Tammy. All right, Dave.
I just like to see consistency throughout. So if there is inconsistency in the zoning that doesn't line up with this, then we correct that zoning deficiency. When someone buys a piece of property, they know what their zoning is, and they'd have to look it up. And if that consistency is there between what we've just passed and previous zoning laws, that would make it much more clear that the person doesn't have grounds to stand there.
Okay. Anything else? Are we ready to move on to committee reports? Okay, committee reports. Let's start with finance personnel.
At the request of the treasurer, we've decided not to try to go through the process of having a executive summary for the reserve policy, and we're going to forward that entire policy to the board.
Okay. Anything else, Karen? Okay. Next, government affairs, public safety.
So our last meeting was held on April 7th, and our next meeting is scheduled for May 5th at 10 a.m. The short-term rental survey did close at the end of the day on Friday. We received a total of 216 responses to that survey. We need to work on analyzing the data over the next couple of weeks. We do hope to have something back to the board as soon as we can. What we'll include is both a summary and the full data for transparency. A couple of things that I would like to ask the board to start thinking on would be to take a look at our code section 161120 and 161130, which already restricts business use and renting of rooms. So if we are going to start tracking and enforcing our existing code there, what does that look like, or do we want to make changes? And a big takeaway from the survey, although this is preliminary, we have not fully analyzed the data, but I would say a need for balance is very clear. There were both pros and cons to short-term rentals in town, and so just something to be mindful of. We're likely to bring back recommendations with that in mind. Other gaps issues, we're still looking at animal control. The draft ADU ordinance is scheduled to go before the Planning Commission on April 30th and should be back to the board in May. And we've also requested a legal opinion from Attorney Nerlin regarding ADUs and water, specifically how we will address change of use and properties that may currently be out of compliance with town code, and how our new regulations would apply in those cases.
Okay, anything to add to that, Mick?
No.
Okay, Karen?
I was just going to ask, if you're looking at ADUs and short-term rentals, and is there a clear distinction between the two? And so make sure that there is.
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
So short-term rentals are specifically as we define them for the survey, and it would be up to the board to officially define them if we decide to adopt any particular regulations, but as we define them for the survey, they are rentals of a dwelling unit or a portion of a dwelling unit for 30 days or less. And accessory dwelling units are an additional dwelling unit on an existing property. So specifically in R1 zoning, because R2 already allows for multiple dwelling units, or at least a secondary dwelling unit. In R1, an accessory dwelling unit is one that is clearly an accessory use to the primary dwelling unit, but a fully separate living space.
But does that also allow for short-term rentals?
That will be for board discussion.
That's, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, seeing none, let's move on to Public Works, Utilities, Facilities.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thomas?
Actually, my question was in regards to finance and personnel. Kind of skipped over it, and I didn't stand up. I'm sorry. But the personal liaison committee was filled as follows. What are the duties and responsibilities of the personal liaison committee?
Yeah. Good question. If an employee has for instance, if there's a dispute that is not resolved internally, this is the dispute resolution process. So there's an informal dispute resolution process that an employee can go through if they disagree with an action that's been taken against them. So that's the main purpose of that board, is to, kind of be a check and balance on actions that are taken to
So it's
employees.
a committee that meets when an employee has like an ombudsman sort of thing, where an
Yeah,
employee has a complaint.
pretty much like that. It's like a hearing type of thing, like, an independent body. It's a citizen, an employee, and a member of the board. So
Right.
those three then make the decision.
And that's the second thing, that Elaine Brett is not a citizen of Peonia.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
I
that.
said Elaine Brett is not a citizen of Peonia.
She's not on the board, I don't think.
She's on the liaison committee.
But a citizen does not have to be, the board does not have to be a citizen of the town of Peonia to be on it.
I was
to be
thinking
on
of a
that
different board. Yeah, she is not a citizen of the town.
Okay. Interesting. How was that formed? How were these three people chosen?
Letters of interest. I believe, yeah, the letters of interest were.
I know there was an informal, we asked the employees to present their own person. That's where Joanne Katzer.
Okay.
I believe Elaine and myself were appointed at a previous meeting.
But we asked for letters of interest, and then
Yeah.
Elaine was the letter of interest we got.
Right, that's all we got. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, good questions.
So before we move on, it's 9:28. We really do need to extend the meeting. So my suggestion is we extend the meeting for an hour, because we still have a executive session to go through.
Madam Mayor, I move that we extend the meeting for 1 hour, but our modified agenda still stands, and those 2 points will not come back to the meeting. Remember the first 2 we deleted?
Oh, yeah, they've
Okay.
already been tabled, so
Okay.
we're
got
okay.
it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Yes, Suzanne.
Your personnel committee, or liaison committee, is described in the personnel manual, and it does list the qualifications that are required by the board, the members of the committee, and it does say citizen of Peonia. And if you look up the definition of citizen in the dictionary, it's someone who has voting rights. They're a member of the governmental organization, people who live within the town. So the interpretation that Elaine Brett is a citizen is incorrect, and it is a requirement in the manual. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Finance. Yes.
Yeah, just if I could make a comment on that with some more information. we requested, I did some research on this when it was on the agenda. So we requested letters of interest for the committee in April of 2020. We did receive a single letter from Elaine Brett, and there was a discussion at that time that we might need to update the personnel handbook to properly reflect the committee makeup, and there was no follow-up conversation at the board level, at least according to my notes, to actually make that happen. So I think that's something that if this is going to be our personnel committee, that needs to come back to the board for consideration.
Thank you, Michelle. All right. Now, Public Works, Utilities and Facilities.
Okay, I think I take it from here.
Yes, they're all
Okay.
yours, Tammy, unless Bill gets to chime in at some point.
Okay, the Public Works, Utilities, and Facilities met on the 13th, and of all we discussed, I think the only things that have not been mentioned in a meeting since then were fire concerns, considering the drought and how high fire danger we're facing, fire concerns at the 2 water tanks and the sewer plant, electrical transformer testing at the sewer plant, which we decided probably wasn't needed as the vegetation is cleaned out around that area, but I believe Mr. Loberg was going to contact DMA for advice on that. Surplus equipment, a resolution is being finalized and will come before the board. Pressure drop control at the 2 million gallon tank and an altitude valve at the 1 million gallon tank. Financial reserve numbers, street sweeping and cleaning, and I believe that is it for Public Works, Utilities, and Facilities, unless Mr. Bear has something to add.
Yeah, the transformer concern was a oil analysis to see if the oil in the transformer is good, or if the transformers are at risk of a failure because of oil contaminants within the oil, which happens just through age. So that was something Travis was going to check with DMEA on, see if they could provide, or who he could get a hold of to provide that service.
Okay, thank you. All right, carrying on. Tree board, Tammy.
Okay, we met on Earth Day, April 22nd. A reminder that at 9:30 Friday, at the corner of 4th and Box Elder, will be an Arbor Day proclamation and a tree planting. And I believe 5 other trees will be planted on the same day. And with that tree planting, 2 of our people who have served on previous tree boards are going to be giving a demonstration on how to plant trees. We're looking at amending the list of approved trees for rights of way. One of our board members, Mark, is going through other towns and finding out exactly, and he's basically compiling a list from doing a lot of research. So we hope to, at some point, bring that before the board. There are some updates to the tree board website, and the next meeting is May 18th at 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. And finally, Advisory Water Board.
Okay, we met, those are the wrong, we met March 24th. We last met March 24th. We discussed Ordinance 2021, to be determined, accessory dwelling unit regulations as it relates to water taps. We are moving forward with our list of priorities that the board had seen and had no problems with. And our April 28th meeting tomorrow is being rescheduled due to a number of people unable to attend. We hope to reschedule next week. I will let people know of that. So I think everybody who needs to know that is here. We hope to have some discussion on recommendations to the board about formalizing drought restrictions, presentations by Thomas Markle, and possible moving of our monthly meetings to earlier in the month to line up with the board meetings. And we are just going to discuss the possibility of lining up some guest speakers. That concludes my reports.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, next item on the agenda is executive session.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
If I may, we also had a section, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this during the GAPS report, but page 443 is recommended changes to Chapter 6 regarding food trucks. I move that in the interest of time, we table this until the next meeting unless staff needs more immediate guidance regarding that.
Well, and we weren't going to do anything with this evening anyway.
Our goal with presenting this to the board is to get board approval of the language so that we can move it to the town attorney to actually begin drafting a formal ordinance. So I would like to have it before the board for discussion at the next meeting if we can do that.
Okay, yeah. So the next time you do this, Michelle, put it on the agenda as an agenda item instead of under staff reports, because then we can take some action on it. All right, thank you. All right, Bill.
Mayor, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402-4B for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to a citizen's complaint filed by Ms. Suzanne Watson against member of the Board of Trustees, Dave Knudsen.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nope, we
Abstain.
don't do citizen comment prior to executive session, Suzanne. We've been through this before. No, we're not taking comment. We are going to go into executive session, and then we will have a possible discussion item. I reached out to the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, and indeed, I should be able to know what specifically the legal advice, the question is, because you cannot go into executive session to discuss an elected official as a personnel matter, and unprivileged facts cannot become privileged facts merely by incorporation into a communication with it.
And we're not discussing the complaint. All we are discussing are the options that are available to the trustees based on the legal options based on the investigation, if should they proceed in that manner. We're not discussing the allegations raised.
This is available to you in a resolution. This is ma'am, we are silent. Let us move into executive session.
Could my vote be recorded as an abstention?
Okay.
And that I'm not, I'm recusing myself from the meeting.
Any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. All right. Hearing none, do we have any motions?
Mayor, this complaint has been brought from a citizen about a trustee, and therefore I move that we add this as an agenda item to the next meeting to further investigate in an open meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, that motion passes. All right. What?
I want to make one more motion.
Please do.
I move that either the town attorney or the staff personnel contact CRSA to have a trustee training session, so we can have further training.
Okay, do I hear a second on that motion?
I second it.
Discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. All right, we are at the end of our discussion, and I can call this meeting adjourned. Thank you,